Got my right hand man here, except he's on the left hand side. So I have to acknowledge the TNRA acknowledges the connection we have with many First Nations communities across our vast regional district. And today we are located on the Thompson-Nicola territory, situated with the unceded ancestral lands of the Shrepnuk Nation. TNRD appreciates the partnership that we have with the Kamloops and the Shrepnuk and respect the territory and land on which we gather. So, any additions or deletions to the agenda? We do have one addition. I talked to Lee Morris and she wanted some updates on the LCA changes that are coming for auxiliary buildings on agricultural land. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarity. So Alex said he could pop into the meeting a little bit later under new business. Sure. So if that's when that comes up, there can be a discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. We just wanted to make sure all the directors didn't have any more questions on the new direction the Agricultural Land Commission is going for auxiliary buildings. There now have to be, it sounds like they need permits and being quite a different scenario to what we're used to. The minutes from January 18th, 2024, ready for adoption. Mover, seconder. Okay. Okay, and then we have the delegations. Fire Smart update. Oh, actually, there is. Well, is highways is later, is it? Yes.
Yeah, through you, Chair, is they are coming around 10 o'clock. So we're going to do Fire Smart first as the agenda states, and then go to Parks bylaw, and then they will be here for kind of a Q&A session. It was kind of a last minute invite because their meetings changed, so you're able to attend. So we've got
that's great.
3 of them coming.
Thank you. So I guess we get into Fire Smart update.
Thank you, Chair. I'll turn it over to Kim McMillan. She is our lead Fire Smart coordinator, month in or a few weeks into the new job. So I'll turn it over to her.
Morning, Kimberly.
Know that by now. Good morning. Thank you, directors, for having me today. So I am going to give you a little presentation about the Fire Smart program, what we're doing, and do you want me to click? So just run through the agenda. I'm going to give you an update about staffing. We'll talk a little bit about what Fire Smart is, provide you an update about the grant, our program update in general, show you some new technology that's been created, and provide you a little time for some questions and answers. So first of all, staffing, we fall under Jamie in operations. Jason Tomlin is the manager of Fire Protection Services. Then there's me, lead Fire Smart coordinator, and my job is to coordinate and organize the Fire Smart program. Field Fire Smart coordinators is Dan Funk. So and then we're also going to be hiring somebody. Dan is on the boots on the ground, goes out and does the assessments, answers questions for residents. The new hire is currently in the selection phase. We haven't done interviews, but the posting closed last week. We're hoping to have this person in place mid-April. Local Fire Smart representatives. So we're going to have to reach out, and we have been in contact with TNRD fire departments and then other local fire departments. They're going to help us do assessments, because we feel we're going to be quite busy. We're going to work in a collaborative nature to ensure that we meet program criteria, make sure we meet the grant requirements. There are 2 courses that are required to be a local Fire Smart representative. The first one is Fire Smart 101. And then the second one is a workshop, about 8 hours, and yes, you've taken it? And then they become a local Fire Smart representative. Okay, what is Fire Smart? So the Fire Smart program is designed to help educate and prepare residents, their homes, their properties, and their neighborhoods to decrease the risk of loss from a wildfire. Fire Smart is built on 7 disciplines: education, vegetation management, emergency planning, cross-training, legislation and planning, development considerations, and interagency cooperation. Fire Smart is based on a scientific evidence that suggests that change to the built environment is the best and most cost-effective way to increase a home's survivability from a wildfire. And our main goal is education. And this education will, from the Fire Smart program, empowers the residents to be able to take action to increase their home survivability in a fire. Oh, the grant update. So in 2023, if you guys remember, we applied for the Fire Smart grant. We were successful for up to 700,000, but we were given parameters on what we were able to do. We were able to do 5 things: hire a Fire Smart coordinator. We hired Dan Funk. Create a community wildfire resilience, or create the community wildfire resiliency plans for all electoral areas, our CWRPs. This has been done. They're currently sitting with BC Wildfire and UBCM for approval. I submitted them at the beginning of February, and I still have not heard back. Fingers crossed, it'll be in the next couple of weeks. We formed a committee, the Community Fire Smart and Resiliency Committee, and that's when we reached out to you folks and asked for a representative from your area. And then we were able to provide Fire Smart education to TNRD residents. So that's going out and doing the Fire Smart assessments, going to a farmer's market, having a tent, providing information that way. So we, in order to move forward to 2024, we had to complete these. Everything's been completed, but we're currently waiting for BC Wildfire. So moving into the 2024 year, our proposed activities are to continue with Fire Smart education, attend fairs, farmers markets, rodeos, attend community events like Wildfire Community Preparedness Days. This could involve maybe having a barbecue, having people like in the whole entire community come out and listen to some education, everybody do a cleanup. Dan can maybe go out and look at some properties and do some assessments. Attend the Fire Smart Summit. There's a summit April 22nd to 24th in Prince George. We're going to continue with the home assessments. We're also going to do assessments on critical infrastructure and community assets. We're going to implement the rebate program and continue with our committee meetings. Booked events so far this year. McClure Volunteer Fire Department, we're going to join with them on their open house. Merritt Library on May 7th, we're going to attend information session there. Vavenby Fire Department, an open house on May 11th. South Green Lake, May 20th, an open house. Loon Lake, this is the grand opening on June 8th. We've been asked to attend the Merritt Wildfire Preparedness Day on June 22nd, so that will be done in conjunction with the Merritt Fire Smart and Fire Department. And the North Thompson Fall Fair Rodeo on August 31st. We're going to attend that one as well. So we have created a way for the residents of the area to be able to book an online assessment, but there's a little bit network problem. So on our TNRD page, we have now, do you want to hit that? We now have a Fire Smart page. So if you go to tnrd.ca, under services, the 5th or 6th one down is Fire Smart. And this page has a whole bunch of information on it. It has the CWPPs from previous that are no, I guess with the new CWRPs, they'll be replaced. But it gives some information, links back to the BC Fire Smart page. And if you click that box, request a Fire Smart home assessment, It will take you to a page where they can request. If you don't mind flipping back to the PowerPoint, please. Perfect. So when you click that button, it's going to bring you up to this map screen. Up in the top left-hand corner, there's a spot to put your address. In this case, I use the example of 404 Spruce Avenue, which is actually an address in the city or the village of Clinton. It will pop up with a message just like this and says, "You're in the village of Clinton, please contact Clinton for more information regarding FireSmart," because we're only able to work in the electoral areas. If by chance they enter, say they live at 1250 Green Lake Road, we would be able to click a button to say request a FireSmart assessment. And the next page that will come up with just some general information for us to collect, be able to contact them to book an assessment. Once they submit that button, Nicole has made this dashboard for us where all of the assessments will come into the top where it says requested. I will be able to have the information to contact them through email or phone. It will make a unique identifier number, which will be carried through to the end. That is noted with like the date and time of their request. Once I've booked the request, then Dan will go out and do, or the new hire will go out and do the assessment. We have made this an online app that the FireSmart coordinator will be able to take their phone up to the resident, and they'll be able to go through the FireSmart form. So they go in and assess from the roof of the property to moving out to 100 meters from the property with what vegetation they would need to remove, trees that maybe need to be trimmed. All of that information will be captured in here, and we'll be able to collect the data and store it moving forward for if we have the opportunity to go back. If they are going to do a rebate, for example, we'll be able to look and upload pictures. We'll be able to see what they did before and compare it to what it looks like now. And then lastly, this is, I think this will be the most important page for you folks. And this is just basically noting how many requests we've had, how many have been completed, in what electoral area that they've been done. We will also be able to see all the green dots on the map are just showing different assessments that we've done, but we're able to zoom in. And if there's an area in one of the electoral areas that hasn't necessarily been have any assessments, we're able to focus in on that area and reach out with maybe some more correspondence or communication and get them to come and request information. Any questions?
Any questions from the, yes, Lee, go ahead.
Thank you for your presentation. I do have a question. When people do the FireSmart assessment and they have a recommendation for how to do their property and they don't follow through on that recommendation, is there any repercussion to the property owner for insurance or through the TNRD or anything like that?
No, and at this stage of the game, the FireSmart home assessments are, some insurance companies are getting on board with those, but not all. I think that might be, it's something called the Home Partners Program. It's kind of one step further than the FireSmart, a little bit more in depth. And that might be how insurance companies maybe provide a discount if you can prove that you're a FireSmart or Home Partners Program. You've done all the things, the mitigation things that we've asked. As for us, it's more, we're just there to educate. We're not going to be able to enforce anybody to clean up their property at this stage of the game. I don't know if that will come down the path, but that's going to be, and that'll be from BC Wildfire giving us that information. That I don't think we can do that.
And if I could just add to that, the enforcement side, we do have the ability within our own fire protection areas to enforce through a bylaw, but it's not related to the Fire Smart inspections. This is more of invite people to your home to give you tips.
That's okay.
Jill, go ahead.
So with this, should a person who's had the Fire Smart inspection and possibly not change what you suggested, and they lose their home to fire, can the insurance company come to the TNRD and say, did this person have this inspected and did they not do what they were supposed to?
It's funny you asked that. We did discuss that. I guess in a sense, they could do a freedom of information request. Our part of things is we are really there for us to educate them. It's not, we're not enforcing anything. We're not, a professional recommendation. It's more, we're here to educate you on this is how we can help you reduce the risk from fires. Because I think that obviously, if you do fire smart your property, it's really against the embers that are coming in. If a big wall of fire is coming down at the house, there might be nothing that we can do.
I understand. I understand where we're coming from. I just know, having worked in the insurance industry, they will come to the TNRD to see if these people had followed Fire Smart, just because that's kind of how they work. So if they do come, if you have to give the information, if somebody asks us that, if a homeowner asks that, then I would have an answer for them. Thank you.
Go ahead, Scott.
Thank you. And just to chime in, and maybe Jamie, if you know more, but I would think that this isn't a legally mandated program that's requiring them to do anything. So it's going to be volunteer. And insurance companies might certainly play that angle, but at the same time, I don't think it's legally binding for them. I mean, I think people are going to want to get on board, given our history and what's gone on in the last few years. So I'm hoping they would just volunteer and
Great,
get
thank you.
followed the practice.
That's the word I need, not legally binding. Thank you.
Trish?
Thank you. She answered one of my questions. The other one is I was going to ask or make a recommendation that maybe the mobile library, that we send the Fire Smart out with the mobile library. I'm thinking selfishly of like Wallachine, Spence's Bridge, Lytton area. If we could send Fire Smart out just to get that word out to all those people, because I think that worked fairly well last year, though I'm not sure that area I was really that included in it, but that would be awesome, please.
Thank you. Great idea. We have definitely discussed that. And we do want to hit every electoral area, then but also different communities within our region that we think would benefit from this. For example, I was yesterday, somebody from Lac Lejeune reached out looking for some more information. And of course, that's an area that I do feel is super important that would benefit from some Fire Smart education. Also area like Turtle Valley, that's another place that I think would also, we'd love to go out because some of these areas we don't always necessarily have representation. And I think it's really important that we hit every electoral area and as many communities as we can.
Supplemental, if we know of events that are happening at some of these small communities, would you like us just to give you names and dates of the events so that you could reach out to these communities? Would that be helpful?
Absolutely. Also, the committee that we formed as well, we're going to try to, because they're basically your residents, people in your area, really funnel some information through to them. And if we're not able to actually meet with somebody or have somebody come out, be able to get them the information, whether it be from a brochure sitting at the post office, or if it's a direction to our website that will have all the same information. It's all, that is my job, is to get that communication out there and get the information to the people so they're empowered. That's the most important part of being able to do this program.
Scott, you had comments?
I just wanted to mention that Director Sao has got his hand up.
Yes, we've got him on the list. Jim Smith? Director Smith?
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Kim. Two questions, actually. After we go out and do the assessment, and give the homeowner a list of to-dos, and the homeowner does that, can he call us back and say, I want you to come back out and acknowledge that I've done everything that you've asked? Do we document that at all, or?
100%. So when it comes in on our system, the previous screen. On this screen, it will come in as an assessment completed, but we have the opportunity to flag it for follow-up. So if Dan goes out there and sees that they have cedars up against the house, they have a whole bunch of debris in their eaves, that'll be something that will be sent to the homeowner. But it will also be it will provide us the ability to do some follow-up. So we'll also, that will be my job. I'll give them whatever. If they haven't heard from them in 3 months, I can send them a note and say, hey, have you completed this? We would love to come back out and just make sure everything's okay and double check. And they're welcome to have us back. Maybe they don't want to have us back. When we get into rebate situations, this is where it will be super important. So we document all of the mitigation that we would like to see, and then the follow-up is going to be the proof that they've actually done the work. So we have the transparency in providing a rebate. If by chance we go out and their house is super fire smarted and they don't need us, we can just pop that into a completed file and we don't see it anymore. I would assume most of our properties, we will have some sort of follow-up.
And supplemental, just a quick clarification as to the role of the area appointed fire smart person.
So their role on the committee is an advisory nature. We do not expect them to go out and knock on doors. It's more of just I would love to be able to use them as a tool to figure out how to provide your electoral area the information. Most of these little communities have Facebook groups and they all chat, but they don't want the TNRD on their Facebook group. So it would be, I would reach out to Diane in your area and say, we're going to come up to South Green Lake. We're going to have a barbecue. Can you put it out on your community page? We've got it on our community page, just any sort of information, any sort of way to relay the information. It might also be, I'm not exactly sure where the best spot is to put up these brochures. Yes, we could go to the post office, but do you guys have a community bulletin board? What's that type of thing? So they mostly, they do provide us like with questions and recommendations, and those are things that I can answer and take back. But there are thoughts of people out knocking on doors and saying, please fire smart. That's not something we expect them to do.
Director Sal, you see your hand up. It's your turn.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. Kim, thank you very much for your team and your work on this. Just a question about the timeline in regards to checks being issued in terms of the rebates. I know you mentioned you're still outstanding a few items from other organizations like UBCM, but do you feel that we're on do you feel that we're on track to have checks issued for works being done this summer by homeowners, residents? And two, how long is the wait between the issue of the invoice from, say, a contractor to the rebate? Thank you.
As soon as we receive the CWRPs from BC Wildfire and UBCM as approved, then I can move forward and apply for 2024 funding. At this stage of the game, that's a little bit of our hang up. I'm not able to provide rebates under the 2023 program. It just wasn't one of the options they provided with us. So once it's approved, once the CWRPs are approved, then I will apply for the new funding. Once I've applied for the new funding, we can start incurring costs underneath that 2024 umbrella. We definitely have chatted about how we want to work the rebate program, but until we are 100% sure with the funding that we've received, we don't know the dollar amount that we can contribute to that. That is going to be the biggest part with working with the budget to make sure that we can have the amount of rebates and how that will work. It's not a dollar for dollar rebate program. So if somebody does $1,000 worth of work and they don't have to have it by a contractor, they can do their sweat equity. And there is a form that can be filled out for that. Then it would be 50%. So if they did $1,000 worth of work or $1,000 worth of time in labor hours, then we would be able to provide them up to $500. Now, something to remember, the TNRD is very big and we have to make sure everybody is treated equally and fairly. So we're just going to have to figure out what the dollar amount will be. It could be $250 rebate. It could be $500. That will be something we work out. As for how long it takes on the processing end of things, obviously, if a person goes out and asks somebody to trim some trees, they'll have to pay the invoice up front. Then they would have to call us. We would have to go out, have a second follow-up assessment just to make sure what they said is done and mitigation is done. Then they would submit the invoice to myself. I would send it to finance. So it probably would take a month from that time. But I do anticipate that by summertime, this will be implemented.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So, yeah, just to let residents know when they ask me, I know I would hate for, I mean, a few residents asked me already, and I just, I'm trying to balance telling them that we're not sure exactly the rollout date and also not to have them wait, to do all this critical work, just because they want to be reimbursed. So the official communication I'll give, is probably, yeah, we're not 100% sure yet. We'll update them later, in the next few months.
I just have a question around the funding. Have you got any idea how much funding is available at this time?
This year we'll be applying for 700,000 again.
Director, your turn.
Thanks, Chair Laird. Quick question. In Area L last fall, we had a meeting at Pritchard Community Hall with Foresight Consultants and Mike Simpson that put on their presentation. Are they still involved in this program, or is their job complete, and how did all that go?
It went great. So Foresight they've handed over the drafted, they're stamped on their end, CWRPs. We've submitted them to UBCM, who does a review of them. And then secondly, it will go to BC Wildfire. So if by chance there's changes, then we'll have to go back to Foresight to have them change whatever was recommended. But other than that, they've fulfilled their duties.
Council.
Just one more question around the rebates. Would that apply to businesses as well, or is this just individual private property?
I think it is. Because they're still a property owner, would you say?
We'd have to clarify that, and these are the pieces that we'll need to decide, because the way the funding works is essentially it's going to be up to us to design the program once it's secured. So we need to decide how that's going to look, who's eligible, are the amounts all going to be equal, or are they going to be different based on risk, those sort of factors. And the business piece, yeah, we'll have to take back. It would be an option that we could fund businesses, but again, the question would be, is that the direction, best use of the limited funding? Yeah.
Director Grenier.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation, Kimberly. The resiliency plans, are they available for the directors to see? We spent a bunch of money on them and like to see them.
Absolutely, as soon as they're approved.
As soon as they're approved by who?
BC Wildfire.
So we can't see them beforehand?
Yeah, we wouldn't be putting them out publicly until they're approved.
No,
Yeah,
I'm thinking more of the electoral area directors to see what's contained in them.
Yeah, I anticipate, I don't see that being a problem. We're anticipating them being approved shortly. Like weeks, right? Or
Well,
less.
they told me a 30-day
Supposed to be 2 weeks ago.
30-day turnaround.
Yeah.
I submitted them on February 2nd and it's March 7th today. But there's 10 at one time. So it's a lot of information. I know there's been some staff changeover at BC Wildfire. There was a little bit of delay on UBCM's end.
Well,
Um,
yeah, I think whenever you feel comfortable releasing them, but we're coming up on Fire Smart and I'm very curious to see what Foresight recommended for my area and where we should focus. Supplementary as well. I know that the Fire Smart committee people, Dave in our area is very keen to have another presentation like the Lac Lejeune presentation that we had last year, but in Cherry Creek area. So I'm wondering, I know you don't want them out knocking on doors, but they're very keen to get going. So if you could reach out at least to the area director or the area representative, I'd love to have an open house or some kind of barbecue, as you say, at either Dave's place or somewhere in the Cherry Creek area.
Absolutely. I'm meeting with them on Tuesday. We have a meeting booked. I think at that time, yeah, I can definitely put it out there because we need them to help us release or get our message out. So if they want to have a community event in their area, we're happy to join.
Scott, you had a comment?
Yeah, I just got a bunch of comments just to help bring some clarity. So as far as the question that Director Grenier had, I don't see a problem with you seeing that. We just don't want to get ahead of it until it's approved, which I think we're on the same page. And we expect to probably have those very soon. I also want to just kind of jump back a little bit as far as the Fire Smart program in BC and the task force that I'm on with the Premier's task force and the fact that this is one of the deliverables for the task force. We talked a lot about Fire Smart. You'll see the recommendations starting to come out soon. They certainly want to dig for the province, that is, they want to dig in further as far as how it's funded and what the budgets are going to be. But it's certainly a high priority for the province. It was a high priority for the task force. So once those recommendations become public and the actions get built around it, I think we'll be in a really good spot. The other thing I wanted to mention is this tool that we're showing. It's not really an animated thing that you can see now, but I would encourage you to go to our website and take a look at this dashboard. And I'd like to thank Nicole. Nicole's here and her team for putting this together because this is kind of a leading edge dashboard that in the future, as this becomes and gets populated with all these assessments, there's going to be hundreds or thousands of assessments that BC Wildfire could actually use this overlay or this layer within their GIS modeling to understand what areas or pockets of areas are fire smarted, which ones aren't. They can determine risk, they can determine resources that they might need. I've actually reached out to BC Wildfire, the Fire Smart team. And once we got feedback from this group, we're going to hopefully bring them in the next week or so to show them this template and show this dashboard to them. And this could potentially be a dashboard or an assessment tool that we could launch for the entire province, and it was built in-house here. So this will be, to me, I think it's a really interesting kind of a way to manage this and to make sure that everybody can use the data. So this will be something that we're going to share with BC Wildfire and Fire Smart, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, and hopefully they can adopt it or something like it, and we can share this with the other 26 regional districts, other First Nations, other municipalities, so that we're all on the same page and be able to respond and mitigate fires much more efficiently. So just some general information that I wanted to share.
Thank you. And I just have go ahead, Director.
Kim, can I get some material? Rose Hill Farmers Institute's having their annual meeting next Friday night at Knutsford Hall in the revamped hall that you give us those generous grants. And I'll take some brochures and I'll just give a brief talk about it and make everybody aware.
And definitely direct them to our website to sign up for an assessment, or they can call me.
I have a question. Are we getting any of this information going into the schools? Because if we all remember back when our children started bringing home how we were supposed to be recycling, and they were a huge influence. I know our kids were in our family because my age, we belong to the throwaway age. And It's nothing like having your 6 or 7-year-old kid come home and ask what you're doing for Fire Smart. Are we getting any information out into the schools about the importance of Fire Smart?
There is a Fire Smart program for schools, where our TNRD program, we're electoral areas. So I don't believe we have any schools in the electoral area. I'm not 100% sure about that. We do? Blue River. Yeah, that's right. Sorry. You might be the only one. So I can get you information. But the municipalities that have the schools in their area, the municipalities they have their own Fire Smart program or should be starting that. So that would be up to them to provide that information. If they need any support, of course, we're here to help. But we are really kind of bound by our electoral area boundaries.
Yeah, there's a school in my area. Where you would take the information is to the school board and see if they're interested in putting a program and putting it out, because I'm sure that when we were getting into the recycling program, that information went to the school board office and then they put it out through their schools. They might be interested in putting a program to do that. And it might just be a question of supplying pamphlets and, an educational program for them.
Absolutely. There is a curriculum. So and it's on the Fire Smart webpage.
Director Hooton.
Just had an idea when Dave brought that up. Be nice if we could piggyback with BC 4-H and get 4-H kids in the rural areas involved in having maybe Fire Smart as part of the 4-H curriculum. They're trying to branch out and get out of the so-called animal type 4-H that we've had for years. And it'd be really good to branch out into the rural areas of the province with BC 4-H, and I'm glad to help you with that one.
That's a great idea, like a little fire ranger. Yeah.
Any other questions from the directors? Director Sal? Got your hand up?
Thank you, Chair. Director Scott. Sorry, the risk of sounding nickel and time, just out of curiosity, is BC Wildfire going to reimburse tool, the online tool or the web tool development, or are we making any licenses for it? Just out of curiosity. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair to Director Yusuf, they haven't even seen it yet. They don't even know what it's about. This is something we just built in-house, so it's certainly something that we'll explore once we have a conversation with them.
Any other questions from the board?
One last thing. Nicole, I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there anything from a GIS standpoint you want to share, Nicole? No, you think it's, no? Okay. I just wanted to congratulate and thank them for the work they've done behind this, because until you see it on our website and how it works and how you can just type in an address and go and find out if it's complete or not complete, and to see the entire TNRD map and be able to zoom into areas and then be able to share it across other jurisdictions, I think is a huge win for us. And it's kind of leading by example. So it's interesting that that this is built in-house, and I think BC Wildfire would be quite excited to see it. And he's, I think, bringing a few people at some point when we book this, and even teamsing or zooming in other folks that are interested in this this work. So,
Director Harm?
Me?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to say, I think it's really, really great. And I think it will be really a great assist for our local fire departments too, because they can go up on here and look and see what's going on and spread the message for us. And I know like Barrier Fire Department, Little Fort and so on, they all do Fire Smart stuff within their own communities. And when they have their open houses, they push Fire Smart. Well, now they can push this. And I think it's tremendous. So kudos to everybody. Kudos to the biller.
Okay, any other questions? Thanks, Kimberly.
Thank you so
That's
much.
Great presentation.
Thanks to Nicole. Good team.
Chair, may I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
I just got a text from Ministry of Transportation. They expect to be here before 10 o'clock, but have to leave for a minister meeting by 10:45. So I just wanted to see if there's flexibility from this group where we can get to the next topic, but if they do show up, if we can be flexible enough to make that work for them.
I don't think that's a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is the TNRD Parks Use Bylaw. Jamie.
All right, good morning, everyone. So this is really more of a facilitated discussion than a presentation. Yeah, I'm on. So what we are doing is going to create a bylaw for the TNRD Parks and Trails system. Background is we don't have a bylaw. I've never had a regulatory bylaw. So we do have rules in place that are posted on signs, but actually have no ability to enforce them if push came to shove. So the best practice is for us to create a bylaw that board adopts, and then we actually have authority to go ahead and enforce if needed. Yeah, there's 15 total parks and trail systems the TNRD looks after, and we anticipate that expanding over the coming years with the regional parks and trails strategy. So we thought now's the time to get this. It's kind of been on the to-do list for a while, knowing that that we don't have any mechanism to enforce any rules. So what we did, what staff did, and I should introduce Sherry Madden, those who haven't met her before. I'm sure everyone has. Sherry Madden did a lot of work on this, and Joe Kang as well. Have done a review of bylaws in other jurisdictions, as well as we reviewed other kind of applicable regulatory bylaws that we have within the TNRD, like for example, solid waste facilities bylaw that regulates the use of those facilities. And now the next step is coming to this committee. So we haven't drafted a bylaw. We have really just, as you see in the report, bullet points that I'm going to put up on the screen here for discussion and input. And I just wanted to go through those and hear from this committee any sort of feedback or thoughts around that. And then we'll take any input from this committee, continue our research, and come back to the board later this spring, summer with a bylaw. Before we get into it, I should make a note in terms of enforcement. There's always the question about, okay, well, are we going to staff up and be out there, manning the parks and doing enforcement? The short answer is no. The idea is that if there's a bylaw in place, then we have the ability to enforce. So this would really be like most of our bylaws. It'd be complaint based. We wouldn't have roving patrols or anything like that. And for the most part, we don't have like ongoing serious issues that we've ran into, but however, we do have from time to time, someone pushing the boundaries of our posted rules and pushing back saying, well, who says I can't have my dog off leash in this park? And that's the purpose of these kind of bylaws. So that's the first example. So the idea would be that in the bylaw, it would specify that, unless otherwise posted or designated, that dogs must be on leash. There'll also be allowance for other animal uses like horses in trails or other equestrian areas within our parks. Also, things like requiring picking up after your pets and just general expectations around animal behavior within parks. Just as an example, we do have one specific park where this is becoming more and more of a challenge. The scenario in that park, it's the park in Birch Island, is it is fenced. And so it's sort of evolved as people start calling it a dog park and using it as a dog park, even though it's not designated as a dog park. We've posted signs up clarifying this is not a dog specific park. Dogs should be on leash. But there definitely is still some ongoing challenges there where some users assume and expect they should be allowed to have their dog off leash because there's a fence there. And then what happens is within the park, there's a children's playground, there's a picnic shelter like this. So it's, doesn't always jive the best. Yeah, so comments, feedback on that?
I just got a question about dog parks. The dog parks are definitely becoming more and more important in our rural communities, even though people live usually on a substantial amount of property. They still like to get their dogs to go and associate with other dogs. Have we got any idea or plans to look at dog parks in our area?
So, good question. We don't at this point, but again, if that's something through the public consultation that comes up through this regional strategy that we'd be looking at, so it definitely would be an option on the table. Dog parks do have, and this, going back to this Birch Island example, dog parks have specific best practices designs. If you've been to dog parks, there's the double gate scenario where you bring your dog in, then the dog can be off leash within that double gate, but also within the dog park, you don't also have play structures and picnic shelters and things like that. But definitely an option on the table. But as of now, no, we don't have any, and there's no plans for creating a dog park.
In Lower Nicola, we have a designated piece of land for park. I think it's basically the size of a residential lot. Is that something that Terry and I could look at doing and putting a dog park on that property?
I would say yes. Again, back to the Parks and Trails strategy, we're reviewing all of those properties.
Yeah.
And going to public consultation to see, should this be developed, what could it be developed into, and what the options are out there. So that's a tentative, I mean, that could be considered, yes, the number of those subdivision parks that we're looking at.
Yeah.
Decision on.
People do drive quite a distance sometimes just to take their dogs into a dog park. So something we can keep in mind. Thank you. Director Yusa.
Thank you, Chair. Just sharing some comment with regards to Birch Island. Yeah, in addition to the issue, obviously the creation of dog park, one of the issue is non-local residents coming to use it. Again, even with it being an official dog park, we have reports from local residents that, yeah, it's quite a significant number of travelers from other communities who are bringing their dogs there. That's just an observation to share. For myself, I'm keeping in touch with the District of Clearwater. I think keeping in touch with our municipal neighbors is important too, because I know Clearwater also has a plan for a dog park. So I mean, I would what do you call it? Suggest, yeah, keeping in touch with the municipalities so that we don't double up, have two dog parks within the, 50-kilometer or something. Yeah, just a note. Thanks.
My question is equine use on trails. What parks would you be looking at that for?
So we have two trail systems, the Barrier Forks Park and the Blue River Park system, or actually there's two trail systems in Blue River. And we would designate whether equine use is possible or not. It's just regulating, yes, they're allowed, or no, they're not.
Director Morris, you had a question?
Probably more an observation than a question, but essentially what I see with the various dog parks, particularly around this area, highly utilized, and the sort of the regulars, as I call them, but they're paying attention. They're very park savvy as well. They're appreciative of the fact that there are as many, and granted, many of them are within city limits, not necessarily electoral areas, but definitely a model to look forward to. And I think it creates a sense of community that's important to people as well. Granted, it's connected to their canines, but what I see is a self-monitoring amongst residents who utilize them which is really, really useful. So I would, if anything, encourage us to look at expanding those types of facilities in a sense because of the community support that actually is attached to all of that, and a sense of community development develops amongst sub neighborhoods as well within our electoral areas. So I think that is a good idea. The equine use, so that's a whole other conversation. No question about that. I'll leave that for this time. But in pieces of the strategy that you're walking through today, this one in particular, I think is a good community initiative. If we can keep it on the books, as it were, that would be good.
Thank you. It looks like our ministry people are here. Scott, uninterrupted.
Correct. I'm not sure. Are you almost done or do you want to, we can
pause this and pick it up.
Yeah, we
Are you
can pause
okay with
it.
that, Chair?
Yeah, I'd like to pause and let them get going.
Awesome, thank you. And if I could simply introduce them. As I mentioned that this is kind of a last minute addition. I know we had talked about it before. There were some scheduling conflicts and I know they were kind of tight on time, but I really appreciate them being here. So really this conversation is just a Q&A with some of the maybe as we're transitioning from winter into spring, you might have some questions about transportation or highways. So we thought we'd invite them. So I'll have them. So so Graham, Sam and Brad are here. They kind of represent the big chunk of our regional district. And I think many of you already know them. But maybe I'll have them just Graham pop up here, maybe just introduce himself and then we can just kind of open it to Q&A if that's okay with you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. How's that? There we are. Good morning. Thanks everybody for having us here. As Scott mentioned, I'm happy to be here and we can take some questions. Kind of give you a bit of a summary on how the winter went for us, kind of from our perspective, and then talk about some of the activities that our teams will be focusing on over the coming weeks and months. So I'll steal a term from Brad Bushel. He's the operations manager based out of Merritt. Sam, operations manager based out of Kamloops, and I'm the district manager based out of Kamloops. So yeah, so steal a term from Brad. We're calling this a winter light for us. Not a lot of snow that at times, warm weathers. Did cause some challenging events for us, for sure. We had that, hovering around zero, some snowfalls. So we were seeing some highway closures and stuff, but good response from our maintenance contractors on the events that we saw. So that was positive for us. I don't know if there's any specific winter summaries that you guys have for your areas, but yeah, we're kind of in load restriction season. And some weeks you'll see it's cold like it is now. And then we're transitioning through a warmer period here through the weekend. So temperatures will rise, the roads will get a little bit mucky out there. You'll see some potholes, soft spots. Very challenging for us to do much work in those conditions. So expect that you might hear some noise from residents. We do generally know that the conditions are out there, and we are just waiting for the right time to go and address those conditions. So just need a little bit of patience from everybody. And if there is safety items, definitely flag those for the ministry team and first and foremost the maintenance contractor. That's kind of the next couple of weeks. As we look out a little bit further here, we'll be shifting into our spring cleanup activities. So you'll see a lot of the sweeping getting underway, grading the roads, and transitioning into some of the dust control and calcium activities. And then with that, we'll shift into the summer activities, mowing and those type of things. So that's just kind of a quick brief, kind of, quick winter summary and where we are looking to go over the next couple weeks and months. We are kind of acutely aware of the drought scenario out there. We've been chatting with our maintenance contractors to try to front load some of those water heavy activities in case we do get into a case where we are asked to or can't pull from water from creeks and streams. So that is something that we are making plans for and trying to get in front of before the dry season. If we do get into a situation where we are asked to limit water use, that will definitely impact some of the maintenance operations that we have over the summer. So, the sweeping, the grading, the bridge washing, all those type of activities. So we are definitely trying to get a jump on those here as early as possible. I think that was about all that I had to for overview. And
You ready for some questions?
Absolutely.
Okay. Oh, looks like everybody wants to talk. I may not get out of here too quick. Director Hooton.
Graham, I know we've talked in the past, and Sam, is there any latest comments that you could make on the improvements that we suggested on 5A from Stump Lake to Kamloops as far as chain on, chain off, Cardew Hill, falling in the creek, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, you bet. Good to see you, Doug. You bet. So we are pursuing design of a chain up as well as a chain off area for Cardew on Highway 5A. Definitely see the need for it out there, especially if, you know, we have closures on Highway 5 and whatnot. So we are pursuing, like I say, the design. Active construction, I would not anticipate for this coming construction season. However, yeah, we've had survey out there. We've had our geotechnical engineers and folks and actively pursuing chain up and chain off for Cardew Hill. You bet.
Just to follow up on that, I see there's two new signs up on Nicola, one on Nicola Stretch and one right beside the bridge at the Nicola Ranch. One of them is announcing some safety issues for construction. Maybe it's through to Brad. And the other one is the automatic or the new weigh scale that is that happening this year?
Yeah, thanks for that. The way it's called the weigh in motion system. It's coming in on the Nicola Flats there, just between Merritt and Upper Nicola, Nicola Ranch. And it's going to be a weigh in motion system where the trucks go by and it collects data off the trucks there, and it stores that and it relays it up to the scale shacks up here and stuff in Kamloops, and it logs all the traffic through there. So that's coming forward. Construction is going to have a pre-construction meeting next week on that one. So.
Great. And what did the other sign mean? Looking at enhancing some of the, it's right at the start of the Nicola Stretch there. It came up. I couldn't understand quite what the meaning of that was.
I'm not sure.
I would think that is probably the weigh in motion sign that you saw. That would be the most recent signage that was installed out in the field.
You know, this was specific to improvements for trucks on the local YVR put it up last week, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, that's the one. It's a big blue and yellow and.
Yeah, it's really big.
That's the weigh in motion one there. It's
Oh, okay.
the safety enhancement on it, but it's the weigh in motion system.
Okay, thanks. Same thing. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just add on there, last year in both Brad's and my jurisdictions of Highway 5A, all of the yellow curve warning signs was redone on Highway 5A. So those are all now the same reflectivity and standard placements for the curve warning signs on that corridor.
Okay. Director Smith.
Thank you, Chair. So just so I'm clear, you guys are involved with just the greater Kamloops Merritt area? Okay.
Yeah, we head up to like Clearwater, Vavenby, out towards Monty Lake, and then down around Portia down to Hope as well.
Okay, I'm from 70 Mile House. So I'd appreciate if next time we have a delegation here that we get representation from Highway 97. Because we've seen you guys a couple of times, but I understand the logistics of it. I guess my question, and it's more of a speed limit question. I'm just wondering why MOT is so difficult to deal with when residents are asking for a speed reduction through a particular corridor, such as the 70-mile corridor. It's about a 2-kilometer corridor. My predecessor had been trying for years and years, and I'm on my second go around now. And I'm not getting any satisfaction at all from MOT. So I'm just wondering if I'm barking up the wrong tree. Am I talking to the wrong people? I have 7 letters of support right now from volunteer fire departments, from the MLA, from the BC ambulance, from the RCMP detachment in Clinton. And I'm just wondering why there's so much pushback to go from 100 kilometer an hour to 80 kilometer an hour through a 2-kilometer stretch.
Yeah, so I can't speak to the specific location, but I can put you in touch if you haven't been in touch with the district manager over there, Sandy Griffiths.
Yeah, well,
And just, on lowering speed limits, we get lots of requests to lower speed limits throughout the province. There are, rigid standards and engineering warrants that need to be looked at and met. So I would assume that it's because some of the warrants aren't being triggered for a lower speed.
So the fact that all the residents are concerned and all of the agencies in the area are concerned doesn't have any weight then.
Yeah.
I can understand engineering when you're asking to raise the speed limit, but I don't understand engineering when you're asking to lower the speed limit by 20 kilometers. It's a safety issue all the way around, so I don't see any engineering backup that's required to provide a safer avenue through that community.
Graham, so who's the district manager? Who would be your equivalent up there?
Yeah, that would be Sandra Griffith.
Oh, it is, okay. And that's who you've talked to, Director Smith?
Well, that's who the first recommendation was sent to.
Okay,
And
awesome. And perhaps we can just pass the message to Connect.
I can make
And
the
we
connection.
can follow up and try to support you through Corbin or myself as well and see if there's anything more we can do. Yeah, we can gladly do that. Thank you.
Director Grenier, you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, folks, for coming. The folks in the North Valley, Tranquil Valley, Red Lake, are keenly interested to hear your RAP, your 10 kilometers of RAP. And we're looking forward to that work this year. So are you able to source the RAP or are you able to go to tender on the RAP?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mike. Good to see you as well. Yeah, I was just in conversation with Barb, the Tranquil Valley president, last week on this matter as well. So very timely. Yeah, so do have an update. So the RAP blend, with again the intent of that not being a paved hard surfaced road, however, a gravel road that is still workable with grader, but with added durability to stand up to the frequent washboard that gets present on that route, especially on the hilly graded sections and call them the kitty litter trucks, absorbent vehicles, commercial vehicles that are observed and frequent that route. So yeah, our original plan was to obtain RAP product. So RAP is recycled asphalt product is the acronym from that, from a local paving job that was going through this year. Unfortunately, that project will not produce enough of this material for us to blend with gravels. However, that does not mean the project will not be going forward. We are looking to alternatives of obtaining this RAP product. So we are currently have reached out through our maintenance contractor, Argo, to obtain estimates, cost estimates from local paving outfits to obtain this RAP blend product. So absolutely, we have funding and full intention. It will not be 10 kilometers worth. However, we are, again, depending on the estimates we receive, we'll kind of determine how the length of what we will be able to do. But as I stated with the president there last week, the intent is focusing on the start of the route from the Kamloops municipal boundary, where again, the frequent washboard where Argo goes out and grades, and then shortly thereafter with all the factors I mentioned earlier appear. So yeah, I'll definitely share more updates when those estimates come in and kind of next steps, but hopefully that's a little bit information for you at this time.
Thank you for that. And supplementary to that, we have folks in the Cherry Creek area that we talked last year about a update to the 2019 Rodeo Drive left-hand turn lane study. The study in 2019 supported the idea of a left turn lane. We've had some tragedies out that way, and I'm wondering if you could give those folks an update on that study review.
Yeah, unfortunately, don't have too much of an update on that. We have engaged our programming planning team regarding this. And I think as a general project, we do support it and definitely see the functionality for it out there. Do not have funding required for this project at this time. So I'll continue to proceed with that. But like I say, unfortunately, I don't have too much other than an update on that. And once I receive a further update from my programming and planning team, I'll definitely make sure to loop you in so you can loop your fellow constituents in.
Thank you.
Director Youssef, you have your hand up?
Sure. Good to see you guys.
You're sort of breaking up.
Uh,
Can't hear you.
a few questions from residents. Oh, sorry. Hello, can you hear me? Hello. Maybe I'll turn off video. Hang on a second. Hello, is this better? Hello, can you guys hear me? Hello,
Yeah,
Hello.
we can hear you,
hello.
maybe.
Okay, sorry, a question and a request. Question, if you guys have a light winter, does that mean some of the funding or the budget that doesn't get used up in the winter maintenance get pushed over to spring or and summer? That's a question and a request. I just, actually, I'm on my way back from Minister Fleming's event last night. I am slowly coming to grasp with when to, knock on doors and such. One thing that I've learned is, when before things become a treasury decision, when it's waiting for staff, expert reports and such, there's not much, advocacy we can do. But once it turns into a treasury decision, that's when the advocacy, it sounds like we can start with. Can you keep us posted in all EAs and the TNRD whenever your team completes a report and makes recommendation to the ministry that it's simply waiting for funding to let us know so that we can help you guys advocate? Thank you.
Yeah, Usaf, thanks for the question. And yeah, we'll definitely, I mean, we met with you last week and, it's through those venues that we'll definitely keep you guys informed as we're, progressing projects or if we're up against budget challenges. You're quite right. Sometimes, when you're talking about some of the investment levels that we have, it's quite a few levels above our desks that those decisions get made. So yes, definitely committed to keeping you guys, everybody in the loop on when we're, supporting projects and maybe running into some funding and where we need some advocacy. For your first question there, unfortunately, winter light does not mean there's a whole bunch more money. The way the maintenance contracts work is for winter activities is the contractors get paid a daily rate and they're expected to be out there and be ready to attend to any condition. And in a heavy snow year, they don't get paid any more. In a light snow year, they don't get paid any less. And a lot of times the challenging conditions where we've seen like the rising and freezing temperatures, there's actually, they're maybe not out, they don't have many seats in the plows, but they're going through a lot of materials. So, salt's quite expensive, winter abrasives quite expensive and all that. So, and the chemical usage increases. So there's winter light means maybe less time in the plow seats, still lots of driving around, doing the patrols and applying chemicals in advance or during storms. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Scott, you had a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was educated last week at our last Premier's Task Force meeting on emergencies about Treasury Board. And the question came up, so I wanted to mention it because there's a lot of recommendations from the task force that are coming forward that are going to require Treasury approval. And and I think Graham would probably attest to this, it's a very a difficult process. They need to be people in ministry that are invited to it. It's not as easy as just advocating and making it happen. It's a really arduous, or it's a really difficult process to go through. So just wanted to make sure that I was quite surprised that process to get onto the Treasury Board agenda and to get approval is sometimes takes a year or two. So just FYI, that's all, because it's something new that I learned last week when I was in Vancouver.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Scott.
Director Morris? Sorry, I didn't
Thank
mean to-
you, Chair Laird. Real quick, couple of ones. Thanks for, by the way, East Shuswap Road, looking good. Thank you. Cattle guards, nobody's sinking. It's all good. I appreciate that. But separately, just more a contact within your ministry in terms of who we might speak with. Getting a number of concerns around horses on highways in a couple of particular areas, and really what the approach might be recommended on that. And it's becoming a larger issue than it had been in the past. So more than anything after the fact, tell me who I should talk to. That'd be great. Okay, well, there you go. Point in that direction.
Here today. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I don't know if there's a specific area you're talking about. I know, we definitely have had some concerns with wild horses through like Paul Lake, Pinnetan area, through the Kamloops Reserve. We do have warning signage up, on those corridors, or if you were seeing there are, areas of roadway that are lacking signage, we can definitely, that's an effective tool where we can let the oncoming motorists know to expect. There may be wild horses in the area. Areas that affect private properties and stuff. BC Cattlemen's Association, that is an advocacy you could go to obtain, or constituent can go to obtain funding for fencing to get certain types along our highway networks.
Director Ansel.
Thank you for that. I just have a question about road lines and the painting standards, and what the standards are, and then how do you ask to have lines painted if they're not meeting the standard?
Yeah, wonderful. And that, I forgot to mention that is another activity that'll be kicking off as soon as we get into our sweeping cycle. We try to coordinate the sweeping first, so we're not painting rocks that then get swept off the road. We've done that before and it's not great. So get it swept and then get it painted. There are reflectivity standards that need to be met. And there are timelines in the contract for when different road lines need to be painted, whether you're talking about like a center line or an edge line, and the location you're talking about, the Coquihalla versus a rural side road somewhere. The timelines are a little bit different.
Supplemental. So my area, I'm outside of your area, so I believe I would be dealing with Grant Erickson, but is he the fellow that would be like Messiter Summit? Say, I don't see any lines on that summit at all anymore.
Yeah, Grant would be a good person to connect with.
Okay, thank you.
Director Grenier.
Thank you, Chair. The folks in Savinaw, there's, I think, a dozen or more road allowances that go to Kamloops Lake. And this issue came up about 6 months ago. They were looking to access those public road allowances to get to Kamloops Lake. A lot of them have been closed off or have vehicles parked on them. They made inquiries to your ministry. I don't know if directly to you, but is there a way that we can work together where we can maybe prioritize a few of those so that we can develop some public access to Kamloops Lake, working with the neighbors, working with the community?
Yeah, we've definitely been in touch with some TNRD staff on the right of ways. Definitely, it's a challenge in the rural areas, and not just around Savinaw. We see it, in a lot of our rural right of ways with access to water. Yeah, happy to work together. There's, where we struggle with that is we don't have like an enforcement arm. And we can write letters and ask residents and all that, but a lot of times we don't have much more of a hammer than that. Unless it's, like a safety or it's inhibiting our ability to maintain the road. Because there are so many of these issues out there, we have to prioritize where we take action on those ones. And then some of the other ones, yeah, we'd be happy to work with TNRD staff to see if there's a solution that, we can both work with on.
Thank you. Okay, I've got a few. Brad, you're mostly off the hook today. One of the things is I agree with Director Smith. I've got somebody, a section of Highway 97, 16 mile, and there are people on the highway. It's 100 kilometers an hour. There's actually a passing lane there, and there's kids getting on school buses. So yes, if we could have somebody there next time that is from that area, because I'm really trying to push that one. I was up there on Saturday taking a look at where the school bus stops, and the passing lane is right there. And I actually saw a highway contractor just whipping along there in a big truck in the snow. And I'm going, whoa, this is supposed to be scary. Anyway, that's number one. Number two, the one at Ferry Road and Highway 12, trying to move that, just lower the speed limit a little bit because of the school buses turning off of Ferry Road. I am talking to Sergeant Clay. He is going to send a letter supporting a speed reduction there and possibly signage, just so that you've got the heads up there, Brad.
I got an update on that one.
Okay.
Actually. There's the three things you brought forward there. That one has some positive movement on it, so it's only a couple hundred meters, so.
Yes,
traffic engineer
exactly.
Said they can do that, but I mean, there's not gonna be police sitting there to enforce it all the time.
Actually, there is. After my conversation yesterday, Sergeant Clay says that he is going to make a concerted effort to have the RCMP there when the school buses are coming through.
Grab the wind column and put a check on it.
All right, thank you. You are now my new favorite road guy. Okay, no, it'll last a little while. And two other things. I wanted to ask if you're going to have your contractors doing more vegetation management, given the dry summer that we're predicting. And the last one is road restrictions. When I was up at 60 Mile the other day, I noticed something I'd never seen before, that there was times that there were different axle weights. So if you could speak to the vegetation and the time frame around axle weights, please.
Sure, vegetation, it's tricky because if we go into a dry spring and it's warm, then the fire hazard goes up and mowing and stuff like that becomes a high risk activity for that. We get limited like everybody else does by the fire center. So we try to get that in place done before those restrictions come in place. It all depends on the weather here. So they are by contract, they have to mow certain roads by a certain width and all that stuff. So it's all by contract, but unfortunately, almost every year as of late, we get stuck with the wildfire hazard rating stuff. So we get stuck with that, but yeah, so that happens every year. It's one of those things Graham talked about as we move into spring and summer, all those activities start to happen really good. Regarding the weights and things like that, and where was that spot? It was in 70 Mile?
It was at 16 Mile. I'd never seen it before, but it had, I can't remember the exact time, but like in the evening, it seemed like the weight restriction was either lifted or much low, like you were allowed a higher weight restriction.
Yeah, we're kind of in a weird situation this year. We had to put it on early because it warmed up so much in the middle of the winter. And then, you know, at night, it's quite cool still. So there can be, it's not like a formal, like a lot of people apply for a formal exemption, and we'll give that to them sometimes on side roads where, you know, you can do this, but you have to do it between midnight and 6 a.m. or something like that, where it's the coldest. And the road base is sort of stable, but that could be something that they've got on. They go up there to try to micromanage their seasonal load restrictions. So try to help out industry a little bit.
Director Hayward.
Okay, thank you. A big thank you to Sam and to Graham for meeting with Director Sow and I the other day. We learned a lot and we really appreciated your time. And since then, I got a call from a fellow in McClure. He lives on West Side Road. And his problem is he's lived on that road for something like 16 years and there's not much road left anymore. It's down to bedrock. I'm sure you guys are aware of that. So and what he's saying is, of course, when the highway closes, he says their road gets about 6 months worth of traffic in an hour. So they're greatly concerned and wondering if there's a plan.
Thanks, Jill. Yeah, good to see you again as well. Yes, we are aware West Side Road needs some love on the back end there, the gravel side. I'm saying this a couple times, I'm not sure if funding's in for that road this year. However, we are looking at crushing material. I think Peterson Scott pit on the north end there is probably the most viable source there. But we are looking at what the most cost-effective way of producing more gravel on that road, as again, we have noted it's needed. So more to come. I'll definitely share you when I have more timelines for you. Just to add, this was a good enhancement on a couple of our side roads. So when Highway 5 North is closed, absolutely, West Side Road sees additional traffic, as does, depending on where the closure is, Huffy Lewis Creek Road and Dunn Lake Road. you know, thank goodness this year we haven't had as many closures on Highway 5. But and again, we definitely do not message the detouring of highway traffic onto these side roads. However, we all know the locals know that's where they go, and fortunately, Google Maps sometimes detours down them as well. So we're trying to get a hold of somebody at Google. It's a difficult task, but we are continuing that trend. But good little initiative we've recently undergone for this year is working with our operational partners. Is not so much for West Side. I know that's where your question came from. I'm spurring a little bit here, but for Dunn Lake Road, for that section of Highway 5 that's closed, working alongside the District of Barrier and the District of Clearwater in order to, because of course, our road's kind of in the middle and then it butts to their district ends on either end. So getting some formal traffic control to keep those commercial vehicles off that road in a detour. Because again, these are gravel side roads. They are not meant for these large, 53-foot trailers. So on top of that, on west side, Dunn Lake and Huffy Lewis, we have established signage on either end, essentially stating that this is a gravel, curvy, narrow road, not designed for this traffic. So commercial vehicles are not recommended for this route. So that signage is in place. And then, yeah, we do have these protocols now in place with the other districts to help out with that. So thank you for the question.
Okay, and thank you. Those signs are wonderful. You can't miss them. They're really good. And if you can't read them, that's too bad. So I just want to say, Mr. Cameron was happy if you could just dump some gravel out there of some sort.
Yeah, sure. And if you want to pass on his contact information to me, I'm more
will.
happy to follow up with
Thank
him.
you very much.
And I do have an update. We, the chief information officer with the ministry, myself and the gentleman who's responsible for Drive BC modernization had a meeting with Google Maps earlier this week. So we found a name in Google.
Director Hooten, you have a question?
No, this is a quick comment. I know you folks have to go. Thanks a lot, Graham and Sam and Justin and folks at Dawson for doing a great job last year. It's kind of a last minute deal when you repaved Del Oro and then River Road underneath the highway there along the river, and it really added some class to that area, and the folks are happy. And thanks for working with the logging contractors south of Kamloops to allow them to get the Rossmore wood out even after the restrictions came on, like you mentioned earlier. You know, I believe Spencer's hauling at 8 at night till 8 in the morning, depending on the day and the temperature. So thanks for working with them.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Doug.
Any other questions from the board? I just had one question. Driving through the winter this year, there seemed to be a lot more trucks, big trucks have either in the ditch or causing problems. When I came up yesterday, there was 2 semis that had actually run into each other, and they were just cleaning the mess up. Are you finding that we're getting more and more truck accidents, or is there anything that highways can do to address those sort of issues?
Yeah, we're with our commercial vehicle safety enforcement team. They meet with the industry and trucking associations all the time to try to help with education and awareness. I think like lots of industries right now, there's lots of inexperience in industries which could be leading to some of the incidents. As I mentioned, we've had, though it's been winter light, some of the events that we've had have really had conditions that get slippery really quickly. So that's probably a contributing factor as well. Brad and Sam?
Yeah, I'll just add for the 5 North corridor, we have an exciting project upcoming this year that's going to tender south of Barrier, a CVSE pullout. So similar to Vinsula for northbound traffic for the southbound direction where we currently don't have one. So this will give our CVSE officers a safe place to pull over trucks and hopefully assist in all the commercial vehicle behavior on the corridor.
Yeah, and I'll add on to Sam's as well, that weigh in motion system on 5A, that's going to be another specifically targeted commercial vehicle kind of safety improvement there. Plus, a few years ago, we did some pullouts in Merritt by the forestry office on 5A for a safe place for the CBSE officers to do their work there. So they've been frequenting that a lot more. Yeah, and then regarding some of the things that we're seeing out there, it gets pretty frustrating on our part too, seeing a lot of these things happen. A lot of them seem to be fairly preventable, but there's been probably 4 or 5 this winter where vehicles have broken down. The other day, yesterday, the vehicle broke down in the fast lane. It was just parked there in the fast lane with its lights flashing, and the other vehicle came up at night and hit it. So it's kind of a weird situation where, yeah, it's just these things are happening, and unfortunately, we're seeing some of the fallout from it. There's a lot of close calls out there too that we see every day. I drive back and forth to Merritt. I see lots of things, but it's just there's a lot more trucks on the road, and I think with that come a lot more situations that can happen. So
I think the best one I saw was the car carrier that was parked nicely off the hill. I had no idea how they got it out, but it was sure an interesting parking position.
Yeah, it sure was. They took out our exclusion fence as well, which now has some nice blue security fence on it. So we, once the ground's thawed there, we'll get the proper fencing back in there. But amazing you kept that upright. Yeah, it was quite the recovery.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Scott?
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to, it sounds like questions are over. I promised these gentlemen that it would be painless today, and I think it was. So just want to thank Graham and Sam and Brad for being here. We will try to get others as well. The logistics sometimes are tough, and I know just one other comment is if I've had lots of experience and with lowering speed limits, and it's a very difficult thing to do. These gentlemen don't make those decisions. They're just that liaison. So advocacy will be would be your best source, but talk to me, talk to Corbin. We can help with those things, and we'll just keep asking. But thank you, gentlemen, for being here. I appreciate it at the last minute.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you very much. Would you like to have a short break before we start? I see a few people wandering. And we'll finish Jamie's presentation.
Welcome back to Parks Bylaw. So again, we're just going through kind of the components that we're planning to include the language about in the bylaw and looking for any feedback or input from this committee. So moving on past dogs, again, pretty straightforward type language around plants and wildlife, not, cutting wood, firewood from our parks, things like that. No injuring, molesting wildlife that are in the area. Obviously put into actual bylaw around no littering, but also things around like no dumping of organic matter, like branches and brush piles that may show up, that kind of thing. And language around making sure there's no contamination or well, any kinds of material ending up in water course that could damage this. This would be a particular, like a scenario I'd see we'd actually enforce this if there was something around like one of our water access parks, like in Blue River, for example, if someone was doing something that could cause contamination or pollution of the lake, that we would enforce that. Yeah, just jump in if you have any comments to add. Otherwise, I'll just kind of keep going through.
The Lower Nicola Park has horses in it. Are we addressing the issue around liability with that? I don't know if there's any other parks that have a riding ring or not.
That's the only park we have that has a riding area, and I think we will have some language specific to that, the use of that and the regulation of that.
Any other questions from the board? Director Houghton.
Jamie, like this whole parks plan that we're doing, are we looking at increasing the parks that we have or looking after the ones we've got better with a set of bylaws?
So the park strategy is completely separate from this discussion here. What the purpose of this discussion is just talking about the bylaws that regulate the current parks we have. Obviously, this bylaw would be an enforcement in any new parks that we create, but bylaws can always be revisited if there was some unique park that we created that this bylaw didn't reflect accurately, we would have to revisit it. Camping, so this is one where we probably have had time to time some issues with it. So to be clear, would be no overnight camping permitted unless there was a special permit process that they'd go through to do that. And the reason I say special permit process, because there could be an event or something like that that we may want to consider it, but other than that, generally speaking, it's no overnight parking, no overnight camping in the parks. So there'd be language around patron conduct. Essentially, if someone's in the park doing things that impact other park users, that they could be asked to leave. Even certain activities that could be, or if it was multiple incidents that could lead to like a ban from the park. We have this similar rules in place around our libraries. Park usage, so regulations around commercial activities. Someone just couldn't set up shop and start selling anything out of there without being pre-approved. And no damage, vandalism, graffiti in the park. There'd be language around trail usage, like the share the trail idea, where different trail users are yielding to other users. So it's horses yield to bikers, bikers yield to hikers, etc. And this is really just around safety and safe use of the trail. We'd be restricting motorized usage in the parks. Generally speaking, again, unless there was sort of some special provision for it. So no ATVs, motorcycles, snowmobiles. Even restrictions around, you know, where even non-motorized vehicles could be used. So things like skateboards and bicycles. Probably also put regulation around drone and aircraft usage. Comments or thoughts on that?
Have a question, Director Thorpe?
Yeah, how would e-bikes fit into that?
Yeah. Good question. So, generally speaking, well, Sherry, maybe you can jump in on this. With our Blue River Trail strategy, I think we already recognize e-bike usage.
Yeah, so e-bikes come in three. E-bikes come in three different categories. So typically on, for example, a trail system that's more like a mountain bike trail system, similar to what we have in the Blue River area, they would be level 1. So they're pedal assist bikes. They do not have a throttle on them. Up to a level 3 bike, which has a full-on throttle and doesn't require you to pedal at all to make it operate. So I think that it would be important that we put some specific language in the bylaw related to what use is allowed. For example, BC Parks, in many of their parks and in their rules, it states that e-bike usage is specific to roadways and not on their trails unless specified by signage. So if they did allow it, it would be more than likely a level 1 bike because the other ones get up to such high rates of speed.
There'd be regulations around parking lots. Again, going back to the camping piece, no overnight parking. And I think this idea of parking lots used for parking, meaning the intention is for parking, so they don't turn into a soccer field or something else like that. Again, not that that would be enforced, but more around liability, covering off the intention. The intention of the parking lot is for parking. The intention of the park is for the park use, playground use.
Just a question, when, for instance, the Garlic Festival, I think everybody's aware that there's vehicles that are in and out and across their field there. So I would imagine that wouldn't apply if it's a special event.
Yeah, and part of this and what we've talked about is around, there's a whole bunch of scenarios that come up around special events. And so we need to have a better special event sort of permitting process that would deal with all those one-offs. Because yeah, generally speaking, no, you can drive your vehicle into the field, but if it was a special event that was being considered that would allow one-time access by vehicles, that would be in the permit process. Fire regulations, so we'd be restricting, open burning. Campfires would be prohibited unless there was, specifically established fire pits. Firework usage generally would be prohibited unless special approval was received, a permit process. And obviously, provincial fire bans would trump anything we would put in this bylaw anyway.
Sorry, Jill, go ahead.
I just have a question about the firecracker usage and fireworks. Why would we pre-approve that in a park?
Well, for example, City of Kamloops, for example, does have a firework display on Canada Day that is in their park. Otherwise, it's prohibited, so it would be a permit process.
Gotcha, thank you.
So it would give us the ability to consider approving it. Otherwise, it's not approved.
Director Morris?
Sorry, Jimmy, just because I'm making a bit of a long list here, do you want me to just wait till the end? Or jump in?
Sure, you can. And I think I'm at the second last slide anyway.
Yeah, and they're all quick, but
Okay.
yeah, good, thanks.
And I think the last one, hours of operation, dawn till dusk would be the posted hours of operation. This is typically something that's not enforced in most parks, but you'll see this posted because from a user perspective, liability perspective, covers our butt. There's no, generally speaking, there's probably not adequate lighting in the parks, or in most cases, there's no lighting, so the posted sign saying it's open from dawn till dusk. Water regulation, we do have the, some, again, some parks that border waterways. So we post signage about the, use or proper use of, regulations from Transport Canada around, what watercrafts are permitted on that lake. However, just to be clear, we don't have the authority to make any determination or restrictions around motor size, for example, or restricting types of watercraft. That's all through Transport Canada. But any of our access points, we would post their signage. Weapons, dangerous objects, so things like obviously, you know, firearms in the park, but also identifying things that could be a hazard to other park users, like golfing. I think there was a comment about disc golfing as well. Obviously, there would be specific, if we have specific areas that it's permitted in, but we'd want to have a way of ensuring that activities in a park are not causing a safety risk to other users in the park. Guess I had more slides than I thought. Sorry, Director Morris. Substance use restrictions. Again, this is a general restriction in most parks bylaws around smoking, but also around alcohol, marijuana, or other illicit substances would be prohibited. Event organizers would require a liquor license, again, part of the permit process for a special event. So we want to provide a mechanism to approve that for special event cases. Be language around staff authority to enforce this bylaw, and the bylaw would designate authority from the board to enforce this. Again, I've been alluding to this all the way through, but we'd have a mechanism for events permitting. So it would lay out requirements, like for example, around liability insurance requirements. We already have liability insurance requirements as part of the hall rentals, and where we do have events, I believe we've already required the liability insurance, but we just formalize that in this bylaw. And penalties and enforcement, I mentioned at the beginning, the idea is that then we actually have a way to formally enforce these rules if needed. Majority of them would be listed as penalties in our bylaw 2500, which lists all the ticketable offenses. And then the other opportunity would be banning of patrons from use of the facility for a set period of time. And that is all. So questions, further discussion?
Director Morrissey, you had questions?
Thank you, Chair Laird. So thank you very much. And frankly, you've probably addressed most of them, but I'll just quickly run down the list. It sort of begs the question. I mean, obviously enforcement is the largest piece that I see in terms of, and I'm sure all of you do, setting these guidelines or requirements in use of our park areas, and then that ability to actually have timely enforcement when required. So that obviously is going to be a big one. Bylaw officers, essentially 7 day a week, maybe engagement in some kind or another. So then a couple other things that came, e-bikes has been addressed. Thank you very much. A couple of types of events that maybe we want to have some discussion around. Archery could be one, and basically flight enabled weapons, as it were. The gun events disc golf in general. All those ones I just see from a liability perspective as well. I'm just rattling them off to you. Invasive weeds rule, we've got that in there in this list, and how again, from that enforcement perspective, you know, the whole thing of various watercraft moving between places and all of that. And we've dealt, I'm sure you guys have dealt with it lots, but let's keep them top of mind. Nuisance users. There's numerous examples. So that one there is going to have to require time and effort, I guess, from you. Fireworks bans, I assume we're banning fireworks in, given the fire, opportunities, I guess it were. And then the final one that I sort of, two, one, liquor licenses for special events. And again, the burden that then may place on us within TRIN-RB Parks, and then administrative components and checks and balances on that. And finally, I assume that we're bolstering our liability clauses as we move forward over time. You've seen the need to put some added legislation around use, but that's what the outline I think is there to do. So those are just my random thoughts at this point. Or questions.
I'll comment on a couple of those. So I think a lot of what you brought up is the way we were trying to structure this bylaw is not to, we don't want to go so far that we're restricting ourselves when we want to do something unique. Like, for example, let's say there's some sort of archery club who wants to do an archery festival. All of those things would require to go through this permit process that we'd need to create as part of this bylaw. So there'd be a mechanism to allow it for a temporary use. Otherwise, generally, it's not permitted. Right. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be a formal temporary use permit as we do through our planning department, but a parks permit to have an event, parks permit, and what are the aspects of that event that we would allow. So even fireworks, I would say the same thing. Yes, there would be a prohibition from using fireworks unless there was a permit. So if a community wants to do a fireworks show in the Birch Island Park for New Year's Eve, you know, when there's low fire risk, is that something we'd consider possibly?
Thank you, Chair. So once the bylaw is written and adopted, then would we be producing an information sign at every park outlining all of the items that you've got on your slides here?
Yes, we would, I mean, it wouldn't be a copy of the bylaw because that'd be a pretty giant sign, but we've done the same thing at the solid waste sites. From the bylaw, we've created sort of a summary version of when you're entering the site, these are the rules that you must follow. And that really helps from even, well, I mean, and it helps, going back to the solid waste example, it helps the staff at those facilities say, this is where it says, and it refers to the bylaw. But even in public parks, you know, obviously there's not staff there very often at all, but even between users, it's very clear, these are the rules set out. So if there's a discussion of someone, for example, having their dog off leash and someone else asks them to put it back on, they could say, well, this is where it says it, and here's where the bylaw is. I also wanted to comment, I think maybe you were going there as well, on Director Morris's comment about enforcement. And this always comes up around bylaws, and Alex and I talk about it all the time. In my opinion, it's a bit of a chicken and the egg thing. Like, do we have the capacity right now to have a bylaw officer out there responding to calls if we're getting a complaint, 3 complaints a week in parks use? No, but we also have no ability to enforce any bylaws now because we don't have a bylaw. So my philosophy on this is we actually regulate it, so there's actually rules in place. We do have some capacity to respond to calls and complaints. If those calls and complaints are increasing and starting to overwhelm our current staff, then we'll be coming back to this board and saying, okay, we have this bylaw in place. We're running out of capacity to respond to it and enforce it. But again, just to be very clear, the intent is to put the bylaw in place, and it's really complaint driven. It's not going to be a monitoring roving officer making sure these rules are followed. Just gives us the ability to enforce when push comes to shove.
Thank you, Chair. Jamie, just following up on Director Smith's questions about enforcement. You know, we're focused pretty much on cost concerns, cost control, as I know you are. So is it the intent that we would use our existing bylaw enforcement people, I think, in the planning department to enforce any infractions? Is that the initial example? And I'm just wondering, in places up in Blue River, which may be a long way away to respond to any incidents, if we had some sort of arrangement with RCMP that would take on some of the, you know, the bigger issues, if somebody was parking there and, you know, you had illicit substances and that sort of stuff, that's probably moving into a police incident anyways. But have you thought through, aside from the teeth, the enforcement of the teeth?
So, thanks for that. The first part of the question, yeah, we have of one bylaw officer in the planning department and one in the operations department. So the idea is that we would lean on them for support on sort of dealing with one-off complaints. The other staff role is, again, depending on the infraction or issue, but I'll use our current sprinkler ticket bylaw, for example. We have staff that, so our utility staff could document a violation, photo document that, yes, here's the sprinkler that's on during the time, having it time stamped. And then all we do internally from our bylaw officer here is we can issue the ticket without actually driving out there for a different person to witness it. So that's one mechanism that helps on sort of the resource side. In terms of the RCMP, generally speaking, and Alex may have comments on this, they're not going to respond or prioritize bylaw infraction complaints. Could they enforce them? Yes. Would they want to or be willing to? Likely not. However, as you alluded to, if it's something that's a criminal violation that's happening in the park, then yeah, absolutely, they would be called and responding to that. Anything to add to that, Alex? Good. Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Yeah, thanks, Jamie. Do we need to make a motion for this? Or are you just information and you'll bring the bylaw back?
No, this is just for information and to receive the feedback, and our intent is now to actually draft a bylaw that goes to the board. But like I said before, we're trying to, ahead of you guys seeing a completed bylaw, having these discussions before we draft it. And so this was great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're now going into the roundtable discussions. Lee Morrissey had asked if we could have a little bit more clarification on the current ALC auxiliary direction and what's happening. So I don't know, do you have some specific questions that you? Yeah.
No, thank you,
Director.
Chair Laird. Just to have this conversation based on what we've seen, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe through to Alex. Unfortunately, I missed the presentation. I was not at the last meeting. Could you just give a quick recap of what's going on with the new direction?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the ALC had some regulation changes. On top of those regulation changes, I think I can say that they've made different interpretations now of that regulation. And so what they did is in the late fall, they said that any accessory building in the ALR that's not for farm use. So let's say it's a residential accessory building. They use the example of a car garage, tool shed, garden shed, workshop. They feel that that accessory building is not an outright use. So they first require what they call a notice of intent application. They review that internally. It doesn't go to the board. ALC makes a decision on that, and only after they have that approval can local government issue the building permit. So what this means for us is that anybody in the ALR, in the TNRD, that has, let's say, a house on the property, and they want to build a small one-car garage, TNRD can no longer issue that building permit until the ALC has approved this notice of intent process. They charge $150. They say it takes 60 days, or within 60 days, they'll have an approval. And so the reason I wanted it to come to the committee was that I want the ALC to explain this to our board rather than staff being the interpreters of it. And I really want to drive home the point that it's affecting our residents, our property owners who are in the ALR. Farm buildings are exempt. So if it's a ranching operation, farming operation, and they build a farm building, that's all right. It's the residential accessory buildings that they're going after.
So just quickly to that, where they are not ALR, where they are, in fact, they simply have a structure that they're utilizing. It's strictly tied to those that are ALR lands, not the small acreages, basically, that are hobby farm status.
Well, and I think that's the issue, is that it's wherever the ALR boundaries are. And so we have many small acreages in the ALR. And so I think part of the problem here, I think don't want to speak for the ALC, but it appears what they're trying to do is to demonstrate that if somebody purchases property in the ALR, that there's a consequence for being in the ALR. It's supposed to be for agriculture. And I think that logic might work if we knew that all the ALR boundaries were correct. The reality on the ground is we have small sliver lots that were created many years ago that are in the ALR, and we apply those same rules to them, and it doesn't make sense. But rather than focus on those changes, the ALC is applying this general policy and interpretation on all properties. So I'll give an example in Director Smith's area. Green Lake, all those small waterfront lots are in the ALR. That means if somebody with their lakefront home or lakefront cottage is building an accessory building, because it's in the ALR, it goes through this process. So it doesn't have to do with the size of the lot, it has to do with wherever the ALR boundaries are. And unfortunately, we know that those boundaries sometimes don't make sense.
Director Smith?
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering if Alex had an opinion on the information that Director Sao sent regarding the approach that the CRD is taking.
I don't know that I received that one. So I'm not really sure. I know that the Caribou Regional District were one of the first to actually implement this.
Okay.
We had actually, I didn't get straight directive from the province, and so we kept going, saying until we hear from them, we're going to keep doing the way we've been doing it. And unfortunately, in the fall, they found us and made it very clear that it was strange that the TNRD wasn't sending more applications their way. So I'm not sure what Caribou is doing currently, but I know in speaking to the planning manager there in the past, there's been a lot of concern, and this is what staff have raised. And maybe this is something that can come from the board, is really some pressure on the Ministry of Agriculture. They're the ones who write these policies and the legislation. To really explain that I think what we're doing is we're actually driving construction underground again or more. Because people call us and ask for the rules, and we throw absolute books at them. And they would rather just build illegally, maybe get caught, maybe not. The consequence is probably just a notice on title. So for many of them, they'd rather build illegally. So instead of, what should really happen is we should be encouraging the ministry to write rules that make sense, especially in a rural context. And the other thing that I'm hearing a lot of is some of these rules were designed for Richmond and Surrey. And we're applying them to small properties in the TNRD and Caribou Regional District, and it's just not, the connection's not there. And I know when I mentioned this in the last meeting, I'll say it again, our staff at the front counter are the ones taking this criticism, right? Because they're the ones doing this part. The ALC staff are great, but they're in Burnaby. And so we're the ones turning people away at the counter, and it's falling on local government.
So just getting back to the South Green Lake thing, so going forward, this isn't in place yet, is it? Or is it?
It's in place, and we're
is it?
having to
So
implement.
going forward now, so if you have a residence on South Green Lake on the water, and you want to add on a 2-car garage, before you do that, you have to, they go through the ALC before you'll issue the permit?
For a notice of intent, yes. And that's not one of the application types that come to the board. I know the board sees several different types of ALR applications. A notice of intent does not come to the board.
How
But
would,
still,
how would a homeowner know?
we inform them at the counter. We have a new page on our website where we've explained all of this. We've created a new fact sheet that we've put onto our website. And some people don't realize it till they come to the counter, and that's sometimes where the conflict arises.
Scott, you gotta.
Just through you, Chair, to the rest of the committee is Director Sao is just coming over top of the Coke in his car. He said he lost connection, but so this was really a question he had that unfortunately he won't be able to participate unless he's there now. I'm not sure if he can hear us or not.
I don't see him up there.
Okay.
And
Oh, hello.
are you back?
Hello. Yeah, back over Great Bear Snow Shed there. Sorry, I just heard my name, or you guys were mentioning me.
Yeah, we were just talking about the topic that's brought up here at the end. Alex is here, just talking about a recap on the presentation from last meeting. And you had sent that email about kind of ALR questions. Or you just
Yes.
needed to know if you had a question.
So yeah, looking at the other, CRD's, response, it seemed like there was more pushback than I thought. I sort of liked what ALC presented, but I also wanted to hear, from Alex, if on the other side, what are there any potential, like, I guess, more administrative time and cost to owners, I suppose, with the new process? Can you give us like some of your comments on the potential cons of having the new NOI, and whether or not you believe we should have a similar pushback from TNRD? Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair. I kind of mentioned just a few moments ago. Basically, it's putting an extra layer of steps involved for our residents. So it is challenging. It adds cost, it adds time. And in many cases, properties that are in the ALR on certain smaller lots probably shouldn't be in the ALR. So when we let owners know about this requirement, sometimes they're first surprised to find out they're even in the ALR. Then there's the surprise of having to go through another step, waiting at least 60 days before being able to get a building permit issued. And in many cases, again, it's not that they're, redeveloping the property, it's that they're trying to add a garden shed. And so I just feel like, and this is my personal opinion, but they're taking a sledgehammer to a pin needle. It seems to be a bit much. And I guess you were saying that Caribou Regional District had a strong response, and that's what I've been hearing from staff as well. So again, perhaps an option would be for the EA directors to make a motion up to the board for a motion or a resolution encouraging the Ministry of Agriculture to reconsider this and to come up with a better plan for our rural areas.
Director Grenier. And then
Thank
Director
you,
Houghton.
thank you, Chair, and thank you, Alex, for that. I was gonna just go right to that. You seem to have not just a personal opinion, a professional opinion about how this is gonna affect our residents, and it's our residents that we're representing. And if something taking place down in Burnaby is not going to work up here, I think it's an obligation on us to push back and say, hey, this isn't working up here. So I would like to somehow make a motion or get some opinion from staff that we could then take to our greater board, and then maybe you can carry on.
The way that would happen is we would make a resolution, I think is what we do, and that gets forwarded to the board for approval. Is that correct? We have to make a resolution asking that the board consider writing a letter to with our opposition.
Absolutely, Chair. So this committee can always make recommendations to the board. And so that would, any resolution that this committee makes would be in the form that the committee recommends that the board write the following letter or a letter with the following points. And then that would be considered when the minutes of this committee meeting go to the board at the next board meeting. So I think that would be the 21st.
Before we make a motion, or I should say a resolution, did you have something to add, Director Hooton?
No, just a question for Alex. I got a call yesterday from Monty Creek Winery over, sounds like a similar situation, what we're talking about here. Changes that have been made in the rules, and I think it was a year ago, we okayed the go-ahead for their greenhouse to be a public venue for events, whether it be craft fairs or weddings or whatever. And it sounds like there's some issues have come up, time-sensitive ones that to do with their weddings, that changes have been made. That wonder if I could just have some of your time tomorrow morning to discuss. Sounds like there's new washroom qualifications and a whole pile of other hurdles that have been thrown in front of them.
To the chair, sure, I'd be happy to talk to you. It is separate from this particular issue, but they have other things going on and we can take that offline, certainly.
Okay, are you writing something up there?
I was just trying to.
Yeah.
On the fly.
Well, we can just make a recommendation.
Yeah, I think maybe if we're writing up some sort of a recommendation that we should have in there that, I don't see it being fair for all of this bad information to have to be passed on by TNRD staff for something that's being developed by the province. So we need to have better communication from the province and better authority so that we're not looking like the bad guy here. I mean, it's really not fair that the front counter staff has to, because I can imagine some people will be pretty pissed off when they come here thinking that they're gonna apply for a building permit and they're not gonna start for 60 days minimum. So somehow we gotta get some more accountability for the province.
I think we can make a recommendation through to the board. And it would require staff input, obviously, because we don't have all the technical or the problems that are facing the planning department. So maybe we could make a recommendation that the board can write a letter to the ALC with our concerns about the new requirements for auxiliary buildings. Is that a motion that we can use? Director Morrissey. You're saying. Is that enough information? Get a letter written? Good.
Yeah, I think that's enough information. Staff can develop the content. So as long as the intent of the letter is to address those concerns, then staff can draft a letter.
Okay. I guess we need all in favor of the recommendation. Okay, it's carried. Thank you. Any more questions for Alex around the agricultural auxiliary building issue? Oh, seeing none. Thanks very much, Alex. Much appreciated. You can go back and do your real job now. Thank you. So if, with the roundtable, are there any directors that have some recommendations or business that they want to bring forward? Jim.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've been talking to Jamie and Scott about having some sort of a display tent for my use when I attend an event such as a farmer's market or whatever. So, and I'm not sure if the other directors are interested in something like this, but I've put it out there that I've been to several events where I've just stood there with my badge on and everybody else is sitting at a table with information and all the rest of it. So from my perspective, it would be a much more professional approach for me to, if I'm going to attend an event, that I have the same equipment that everybody else is, so I'm just putting it out there. We're dealing with it right now, and I'm not sure what the end is gonna be. There seems to be some issue about having the TNRD logo on the tent. I would only be using it for TNRD business, so I'm not sure why there'd be a problem with a TNRD logo on the tent. But everybody else has a tent, a table and 2 chairs, so why not us?
Just a question on that is, yeah, lost my train of thought. How many, I'll go the easy way. How many other directors are interested in pursuing this sort of a display? Looks like there's a few out there. I'm not sure, maybe Jamie, you have an idea of how it might work instead of having a, whole everybody having one, or is it easier for a director to maybe take it out of their discretionary fund so they have a?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. So the discussion with the individual directors has been about using discretionary funds to acquire that tent. So I think hearing this discussion here, what would be most prudent, and I'm gonna let Greg's way, is that we could send out an email and sort of develop this would be sort of the mechanism to funding it and the guidelines for use. And then we could provide clarification on that branding use. And then where the money would be coming from. And then directors could choose to use their discretionary funding towards that purpose or not. So, because I can't give all that, I don't have all the answers right now on that, but I think that would probably be the best mechanism. Do you agree, Greg?
Thank you. Yes, I know that I think from a staff perspective, our biggest concerns would be about just making sure there weren't any questions around propriety, around making sure that people know that they're dealing with a director, because it's obviously always completely appropriate for directors to take input from their community, from their constituents. But at the same time, if a resident isn't sure whether they're dealing with staff or a person who can make a decision or advocate on their behalf, etc. So I think we would want to make sure that there were just guidelines in place about exactly how these were to be used. And as Jamie says, just clarity on exactly which source of funding would be used for these purposes.
I've previously, I've used, I think the TNRD already has 2 or 3 of these tents. I've used them at a couple of different events. It comes complete with TNRD insignia. We had tables and chairs that came, and plus, depending on which we were at, we had information and pamphlets to hand out, whether it's around solid waste or any other issues. That would be a great idea to have all the information on the interface protection, that when you go to an event, you have that information to hand out to the public. And I think it's the only onerous thing about using the TNRD equipment is you have to pick it up, use it, and then you have to bring it back. So you might find maybe 2 directors might just use 1 tent between them, and they can work around that instead of having to bring it back and forth to the TNRD all the time. That's something that I can see that would work. I think as Director Smith says, I think it's important that we be able to represent the TNRD and who we are as the representatives for the electorate, and be able to hand out information if you want to put the effort out. It's not something that's required. One thing I've always tried to do is if it's something that's requires staff, I've asked if a staff person couldn't come down and be part of it, but it's not necessary that they're at every event that you go to. So yes, Director Thorpe.
Thanks, Chair Laird. I'm a little confused with this because I reached out and I think I sent an email about it, and Scott called me, and essentially what I took away from the conversation is that yes, you could do a tent, and yes, it could come out of discretionary funding, but no, it couldn't have the TNRD logo because we were only 1 director out of 27. So having had that conversation with them, the decision was made that I would take care of a tent on my own, and it would not have a TNRD logo on it, and it would be mine to use however I chose once I left the TNRD. So now hearing that this is a possibility, I'm extremely confused. So could maybe you clarify?
Thank you through Chair to Director Thorpe. So just to be absolutely clear on this, I think if a director purchases a tent using their own funding for their own purposes, there is never going to be any question about anything going wrong for any reason. The only time when we would want to say bring out corporate guidelines about things would be when TNRD logos are going to be involved, when there are going to be questions about, is there going to be any confusion about, is this an organizational entity that's presenting, or is it an elected member? So I say it's always appropriate for elected members and their constituents to talk and have conversations. But as an organization, we would sometimes just want to be clear on in what capacity that was taking place. So if you do not have any TNRD logos and paperwork, etc., that question simply doesn't arise. If the logos do exist, if they are heavily plastered, there are situations where that is completely appropriate and entirely useful. But there are also situations where, for example, you might be appearing as a person seeking re-election, in which case that would then become inappropriate in that context, which is why we would want to have guidelines. And so then essentially, when the logos are present, there becomes an increased organizational wish to know exactly what's going on and to have guidelines in place. If the logos are not present, you don't have those concerns.
Okay, that wasn't the conversation we had. Or at least that's not my take on the conversation. It sounded like, no, because you were one of 27. And so that the logos were not appropriate. And now I'm hearing that, yes, the logos could be appropriate as long as you're not using it for campaigning, which would make sense. But that's not the conversation I had a week ago.
I think we've got past that. If the board supports the recommendation that we look at getting tents and ask staff to come back with basic how, and I guess it'd be some sort of information on how a director is to be presented at a TNRD function or a TNRD, local TNRD representation at any sort of function.
Yeah, if I may, Chair, I would agree with that. If it's sounding like from this discussion that from staff here that we need to provide a written information to clarify appropriate use and public displays by directors. Because I would echo Greg's concern. There's definitely examples where it's very appropriate. The TNRD directors attending an event, providing information about specific things, operational things versus, for example, seeking re-election is the opposite example where it wouldn't be appropriate.
Any other questions? No, Director Grenier.
Thank you, Chair. My question was going to be around some the protocol agreements, but Corbin unfortunately just left, so I'm wondering if we could.
Can we just finish off this and get a?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we were moving on. Okay,
Recommendation.
yes.
So Director Smith, do you want to make a recommendation that we proceed with having display tents with logo on it?
Yeah, for sure. And if there's a set of guidelines that we have to abide by and sign, and if the tents have to be returned 3 months before the next election, you can put all that stuff in there. I don't see any directors here abusing that privilege.
Is there any other information? The recommendation that we take it to the board and get approval?
Yeah, I think that, what I'm hearing is that it would be to direct staff to create probably, I guess, a policy around this and a mechanism for providing public information, sort of brochures, displays, etc.
That is the motion, that recommendation written down so we can have a question on vote.
So, sorry, just, also, I believe Director Sal has his virtual hand raised, but, just before you maybe go to him, I think
Okay.
the,
Okay, Director Sal. Oh, there he is. We can see you. Director Sal, you have your hand up. Do you have a question? I have no idea what's going on with that one. So many, so you haven't, I'll not just call, I'll call the recommend on the motion, the recommendation. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Director Sal, are you, can you hear us?
Yep.
At least so.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a comment and clarification. So this is,
We can't hear you. You're breaking up.
the tents would be
Yeah, they're,
just for, can you guys hear me?
No, we can't hear you. Director Ian, you had a,
Thank you,
item?
Chair. So I don't know if Corbin is available or not, but we recently had an opportunity, Director Thorpe and myself and Corbin and CAO Hildebrand met with the Skeetchison band, a similar format to meeting with Tecumseh-Secwepemc with the local area directors and I guess the city of Kamloops. And I'm just thinking that if we're going to continue to be doing these things, we should have some discussion ahead of the actual meeting so that directors know what the discussions that have been with those particular bands in the past and what our objectives and clarity around what we're trying to achieve. I know that we've given Corbin the mandate to go out and advocate and create these relationships, but I think that there's probably a useful step before we have the actual meeting that we have conversations or discussions around those meetings so that, for instance, in the case of Trish and I at the Skeetchison, we're sitting at ahead of the meeting, and for whatever reason, there was a timing difference. We didn't know if we were going to go into the meeting without you because there was we got there at 10:30. We were told to be there for a 10:30 meeting. So we were thinking, well, we're going to have to come up with what it is, what we're about to say. And I'm thinking that that could have been avoided if we had had a conversation ahead of time with Corbin. So it's more just a procedural thing that I think would be useful. And I think it's also important to let other directors who are not in those areas know that these discussions are going on. And then perhaps at some point, Corbin could report how well they're going, that sort of thing. So that's just my comments. If you had any.
Sure, if I may, through you, Chair Laird. So yeah, that was maybe an oversight that will certainly we need to communicate maybe and talk a bit more. His approach typically with First Nations and how he's building these relationships is he's leaving it up to them to set the time, the topics, it's their meeting. But there probably is some good background discussion that we can have on some of the staff level things that maybe we've worked on, and just to give you kind of a general understanding of kind of where we're at. But a lot of the things there was some surprises in that meeting that we wouldn't have been aware of anyway. But having that discussion ahead of time makes sense. I know for our 25 First Nations in the regional district, Corbin has tried to regionalize things. So for example, when we're meeting with Skeetchison like we did, having yourself and Director Thorpe there made sense because you're kind of the electoral areas that kind of fit around that area. It's really difficult to include all 27 board members because I guess we can educate them on kind of the process we're using, but to include them in some of these meetings wouldn't make any sense. So we're trying to regionalize those things and making it very localized so that we can kind of work through the issues and the concerns and at least start the process. Because this is going to take years for us to kind of get to a point where we feel like our relationships at a great level. We started great. We had our approach and our start with T-Test and the Kamloops and with Sim First Nation and others. It has been great so far, but hopefully that provides a bit of kind of feedback, but certainly communication prior to those meetings. I hear you. So I'll pass it along.
Just supplementary to that, I appreciate the initiative and moving forward with that. I totally get the idea that you would want to involve the local EA directors. But as an overall policy, I think that we, as the TNRD, need to be engaged, all the directors, even if it's a Skeetchison matter or a Tecumseh matter or a Simp matter, to understand what it is we're trying to achieve. That explanation at that Tecumseh meeting about protocols trying to sort of parallel with City of Kamloops, that these were initiatives to initiate discussion and work cooperatively. I think we need to sort of set a bunch of objectives from the TNRD perspective, not just the local area directors, and have a kind of a discussion about that so that we've got some parameters around that. Would that be useful? I'm wondering.
Yeah, yes, and to answer, so that's our intent, and that's what we've been kind of following as far as sharing information with the board. When I do my CAO update once per month, which I'll be doing coming up on the 21st, Corbin's I was part of that, and we'll continue to be providing feedback on some of his wins and some of the relationships he's started. So that will constantly be there. We're using, so for example, the Sim First Nation, we have a meeting here at lunchtime today with those area directors and mayors that are in that area to kind of walk through another similar protocol or a memorandum of understanding document. So we're trying to use a template that makes sense from a starting point, but at the end of the day, we need to make sure that it aligns with what the First Nation's looking for. And so that might evolve, that might change, but we're starting with a kind of a common standpoint and then building from there as we reach out to First Nations.
And I just have a comment. We're all elected representatives of the regional district in our areas. Are you talking to staff? Or are you talking to elected band members and chief when you have these meetings?
Thank you for the question. Typically, our relationship is mostly with staff for the most part. During emergency situations, a lot of the First Nation structures are set up much differently than local government.
Yeah.
Where chief and council actually have portfolios similar to T-Test and others where they are working within the portfolios that we deal with on a local level. So sometimes there is crossover, but when we do have these meetings, it's elected official to elected official. So chief and council was at Skeetchison. We had our elected officials there. We of course let them speak first and we fill in the blanks if there's questions or concerns. But it is a bit of a hybrid system because it is a bit of a different structure in a lot of the First Nations where they are responsible for operational needs in some ways. So we try to stick with staff to staff and elected official to elected official. That's always our goal, but it's not always the case.
Any other questions from directors? Director Hooton and then Director Thorpe.
Okay, this is on a different topic. Is that okay, Chair Laird?
I'd like to stay to this until we're done and then we'll go to whatever the next one is. Director Thorpe.
Thanks. Actually, I would echo Director Grenier because to be honest, I had no idea what was going on. It was the first one I'd been to. I do know that Director Grenier has been to one before. So we're sitting there 15 minutes ahead of when it was apparently scheduled going, okay, if they don't show up, what are we doing? Because I don't know. And it would be because I haven't been through one before, I'd like to make a recommendation that prior to having one of these meetings with a local band, that we have some consultation or maybe some heads up from staff so that we know what we're going into. We know if there's any potential issues from the past and what our objective is, just so that we're all on the same page and it goes a little smoother, please and thank you.
Yeah, so to again answer that question, the meeting was set at 10:45 right from the beginning. And I think when the calendar invite went out and he typed in 10:30, it either goes on the half hour. That's just, it went through that way. That was the oversight. That we'll make sure it doesn't happen again. To me, that's pretty simple to fix. And I don't think there needs, our intention is to do what you're suggesting. So I don't think there needs to be a motion or a recommendation. That's our goal and our intention to do is to, this is new for us. This is new for Corbin. He is very, motivated to make this a priority, and this is a strategic priority of the board. So we will, yeah, we'll make sure that there's communication prior.
Can we not make it a recommendation and then we'll get a follow-up? I think that's I would like to see. And then it's
Like a motion or a recommendation?
I recommend that we don't make, we just make a recommendation.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
you've said it, like, that's exactly
Yeah.
what we agreed to.
No, we can't make motions, but we can make recommendations. So, do we need to add anything to that, but, the recommendation that, Director Thorpe put forward? Okay, so I'll call the measure. Do you have anything to add?
I was just gonna support that.
Yeah, I'll just call a, vote on the recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Director Hooton, you had something to bring up. Oh,
You go ahead.
yeah. Director Onslow.
Thank you, thank you. Sorry about that, Doug. Yeah, I have to leave shortly for an appointment, so I just have a few things. One was that I was at a community-to-community meeting yesterday where an MOU was signed with Simp First Nation and the mayors along the valley. And it was awesome. It was wonderful. It was great to see. There's a lot of collaboration going on, and I unfortunately will miss the meeting today with you guys, but I have all faith that it is going to be very, very well taken.
Great.
Okay.
Can I just respond to that if I may,
Mhm.
Chair? So the difference between our meeting at Skeetchison and the one that happened yesterday was this was an introductory meeting at Skeetchison. It was their agenda. We wanted to find out what their concerns were. We certainly heard that. This was a formal C2C meeting with elected officials on both sides, full day agenda, topics. So it was kind of the next step of what we would anticipate with Skeetchison First Nation.
Okay, and then just one of the things that I noticed is like the cost of services and obviously inflation and the tax rate, et cetera. So this is at the very, very infancy of a project with Jamie and Sherry to come up with a video promoting Blue River, which was instigated because our school is threatened to be closed. And so because of a low number, we only have 4 students, so it's more like a attractive video to our town. But in the cost of services, I just really want to ensure that the TNRD is always utilizing stuff that we already have as well. So I understand, like, I don't want to speak specific to this video because we haven't even had the chance to sit down and have an actual meeting about it, but there are a lot of things that the TNRD has in their data banks and professionals have done photographs, et cetera, that I think is material that can be used. And I just would hope that it's never forgotten. So that it's there and that it should be used, because at some point it was paid for to have this and it should be used, in my opinion. And then Jamie, a question for you. How would you go about setting up something else like in the park in Blue River? Say if there was an interest for a basketball court, is that just a conversation, or is that something that, would have to be looked at and then budgeted for? Like, how would something like that happen? Or eventually down the line, like a pump track? Like, how do you even get these on the list of ideas?
That's a good question. So I think where it would start is, there's community meetings within your community where these kind of, there are opportunity for these ideas to come forward. And then looking specifically at, this example, at the parks budget and capital planning, of what's sort of in the long-term plan for those. So, similar to how other capital improvements have been made and more specifically in Blue River, be the same mechanisms. The idea comes forward, but then it's not like it's going to happen that next year. We need to figure out, okay, what's this going to impact? What's the cost? What's the tax implications? What's in the reserve fund? Is this bumping something else that's already in there? So that's the whole point of putting these plans together. So maybe that's a long-winded roundabout answer, but I think to get the idea going is this something the community really wants? And where does that fall in the priority list within the board strategic plan, and then within staff capacity to execute on that, and within reserve funds that are there.
Any other questions? Okay. Director Hooten.
This is just more for information, just to share this with the directors. Recently Corbin and myself and Director Sow attended one of the first water drought meetings that have been held by the Ministry of Agriculture and the Water Stewardship Branch, the same folks that gave us a presentation here, I believe back in January. They put one on in Westwold, and if everybody remembers, Westwold was a very contentious water area last year, and the temperature was up pretty good. So going into this meeting, you don't know how it's going to go. So they hired a facilitator to kind of oversee the meeting, and I think the intentions of the meeting were good. But I think the way the meeting was handled wasn't so good, because they had a 2-hour time limit. And the presenters didn't get a full chance of sharing all their information they wanted to share. They started opening the floor up to questions along the way, and I think they wanted to do that to show, some fairness, I guess is the right word. But to me, I didn't think that meeting went well at all. That it was heated at probably at the latter end. It's a heated conversation, and I just don't think at the end of the day there was a sense of trust between the two sides. I hope when the ministry puts these on in other areas, I believe there's one in Merritt, Chase, and Barnhart Vale, that the format is different. I think they should be able to present their stuff and then open the floor up and give the folks a lot of chance. But like I said, their intent was good. I think all bunch of us with working hard in the background to help set up these meetings was the right thing to do, so that they're sharing info ahead of water use season. But I just hope the rest of them go better than the one did in Westwold. And I urge, if there's some in your area, to go and attend them on their, like I said, the staff I believe had the best intentions, but at the end of the day, I don't know if it was the right outcome. Thank you.
And just to comment on that, I was at a different meeting. It was just water use, how to use water on your land. It was another presentation made by the same department. Ours is on the 13th this month for the same presentation. There was a comment there. They had one in the Okanagan somewhere similar. It's the same presentation. They got bogged down exactly the same way. They didn't get halfway through their agenda. They were there for over 2 hours, and they didn't even get to present their information before they got into the dogfight. And it's basically us against them. It's not sharing information, unfortunately. Maybe through the Safe Hildebrand, is there a way of us communicating and saying that maybe they do a different presentation? Because this is the second one that I've heard that's gone sideways, where they don't even get a chance to put the information out before it gets so consultational that you don't actually get to hear all the information. Is there a way that we could ask them to maybe change the presentation, or is that up to us?
I was responding to another question. So just can you refresh my memory on the question itself, though?
Well, what we're finding with the information that they're presenting on water use, and then on the new direction it's coming with the dry climate, and that same presentation we had at the board from them.
Yeah, right.
And now they're going to the communities now, and they're basically trying to do the same presentation and explain how things are working. But what happens is it gets into a very heated conversation before all the information gets presented. So the people that go to find out what's happening get involved in the fighting and interaction. Is there a way we could make a suggestion that their format change a little bit? Because
certainly
this is the second meeting that I've heard that it happened the same way.
We can certainly provide feedback, but that's all we really can do. I mean, ultimately, they would decide on their approach and presentation, but we can give them the direct feedback of how it's being received, and perhaps they would adjust it.
That would be great. I don't think area director has Can we actually do that? Have a conversation, or would it be staff to staff?
If staff's presenting, it needs to be staff to staff, but
Yeah.
if you're talking to, I guess, other elected officials, that could be something that would be brought forward, but we can certainly, I can talk to Corbin because he's kind of been the lead on that one and making sure we connect with those folks and just give them honest feedback of how we're seeing it from our perspective.
I think that would really help to get the information out.
Okay, we can try
And
that.
they're not pleasant meetings when stuff like that happens.
Thank you.
Any other business from the Director Thorpe?
And this is an information thing. I was listening to the radio yesterday. Columbia Shuswap Regional District, they're having some sort of open houses regarding the Bush Creek wildfire. And there's two of them that are online. I think one's the 13th and the 14th, or maybe it's the 12th and the 13th in the evening. And it looks like you can just sign up. If anybody was interested, I thought it might be useful for us just to kind of be the fly on the wall and see how residents thought, what their input was. Maybe there's things that we can use.
Do you know who was organizing it?
Columbia Shuswap Regional District.
Oh, so they were specifically doing it.
Yeah, if you go on their website, I actually went on there this morning and I think I signed myself up for the 14th between 6:30 and 8:30 in the evening.
Gotcha.
I just thought it'd be good information. Maybe there's things that we can learn.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Director Grenier.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to update directors on the TELUS situation up in Tronquil Valley area. The CRTC has become involved with this file, actually opened up a public file about the situation. I'll just summarize some of the things that have been posted. The CRTC asked TELUS some very direct questions about their cancellation of the service by March 8. They subsequently ordered TELUS not to cancel the service by March 8. And I can report as of yesterday, a number of the residents are getting phone calls from TELUS saying that we're going to continue to keep the phone service operating beyond March 8. That's a small win, I suppose. The CRTC and Connecting Communities, which is the BC counterpart to CRTC, are watching this very closely. There were 3 communities in the province, 2 smaller communities, and then by far this was the larger of the 3. And they had actually shut down one of the communities. CRTC said, hey, don't you have an obligation to come to CRTC before you shut these down? In fact, give us a legal explanation why you did this, because you might be in contravention of the Communications or the Telecommunications Act. And it asked TELUS, in our case, to explore alternatives to shutting down or replacing the service. So that's an ongoing discussion. And I'm hopeful that we may end up with some kind of a cellular tower that might be sponsored by CRTC and Connecting Communities and TELUS. So that's the first thing I wanted to report on. The second is that when I was at the ELGA conference, there was a display by BC Lottery Corporation. And I was asked a question to win some kind of fridge magnet or something. How much money did BC Lotteries put back into the communities? And I said, well, I'm in a regional district. And there was a sort of a pause and, oh, we don't do regional districts. We do communities where there's casinos. And it leads, for me, a bigger question. Don't regional district constituents buy lottery tickets? And if we do, are we getting our share of the community grant monies that are associated with that? In discussion with Director Laird, I'm hearing that if you happen to have a casino in your area, then you get quite a bit of funds, but that seems a little disproportionate because a lot of regional district people go to casinos. They're supporting the casino. Is there some sort of formula that we might, as a regional district, along with other regional districts, ask BC Lottery Corporation to broaden the distribution of funds? So I'm wondering, that's a question for staff, if staff are aware of our share and whether directors would like to pursue this if we could achieve some additional funds.
Just around casinos. Casinos are different licensing than the lottery. It might be under the same lottery BC, but they operate separately than the lottery, where you get all your scratch and wins and whatever they put out for. And that's where the lottery fund, that's when it comes, it gives opportunity for community associations and societies to apply to the BC lottery for funding for projects. I think one of the ones that I'm not sure, I think the curling club in Merritt actually accessed lottery funding for their new roof. Casinos, any city that has a casino in it, and it's Kamloops, Vernon, Kelowna, and Penticton all have casinos. There's a direct sharing of profits with that community, that city alone. And the city, if you live on the fringe area, the money just goes strictly for the city. And I'm not sure if there's any criteria attached how they spend it, but that's the difference. The cities get the casino money, and the rest of the lottery funds are shared throughout BC, whether you're in a regional district or a city. People in any of the communities can apply if they have a project, and I think that's how that's the split in it. I don't know if we want to take on the lottery BC. Might be a bit of a challenge. There's only 10 of us. Anyway, I don't know if it's something that we could pursue and ask. It might be worthwhile finding out how the money is shared out, as like from BC Lottery. Is it? I know there's a certain amount every year that is available, but I'm not sure if it's for all of BC, or do they have different areas where the funding can go, or does you have any information on that?
I just know what I kind of know from just experience, that I know that they, on their website, report out exactly what they spend every year and how they spend it. And to Director Laird's or Chair Laird's point, I know they have the ability for people to request money for projects and initiatives and groups and societies. But I know they roll that out every year, because it's something that I think is well received. I guess if the committee is thinking of doing so, this would be a board decision to be going and like, so I think that information you're specifically asking for is available on their website. So any of us can go look at exactly how it's spent and how it's divvied up. And then as far as us getting a part of that, that would be certainly a huge advocacy thing that would have to go through the province, I would think, and understand how that works. But I think the board would need to provide that direction. As that would be, it would take up some time for us to go and redo all that research and understand how we would want to approach that, if that's what you're asking.
I'm not sure what we're asking for. I think what we're looking at is something that is, we could probably get a little bit of information around the difference between what the casinos put into a community compared to, we already know what Lottery BC does, when I don't know anything about casinos and how they work. I just know there's a percentage shared with the city that they're working out of. And I don't think we'd ever be able to get funding coming to the regional district from a casino. That's it. They've been in place for a long time with the same regulations, and I haven't heard or seen any changes to that. So I don't know, does the board want to pursue anything, find out more information? I guess if we want to, we can actually go on the webpage and find out how the casinos are sharing their funds in a community. I don't think there's anything required from staff on that one.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the directors? Any other business? Oh, Director Hooton.
Couple of things, to CAO Hildebrand, I thought that was a good Zoom meeting. We had the task force meeting. Mike Grenier and I attended at the boardroom here. I thought it was a very productive meeting. Just want to thank your group for that. And on another matter, I'm going to forward you the fellow's contact, similar to Director Grenier's regarding cell towers and all that. I've had a few calls from a gentleman, Chad Marlette. He's a consultant out of Vancouver that works for both Rogers and TELUS. And Rogers, we're going to put a cell tower right across from the Monty Lake store on a private property. And of course, everybody wants a cell tower and cell serve, but nobody wants it in their backyard. So there was petitions and the world was going to come to an end there in Monty Lake. So they have since moved the location to the above the Monty Lake store by the TELUS tower. So, and I mentioned the lack of cell service on Highway 5A. I've done it a couple of times from Kamloops down to Douglas Lake and down through that area. And he said he was going to look into it. His name's Chad Marlatt. I don't know if you know him or, but I forwarded you the contact.
Thank you, and through Chair Laird. I appreciate your comments on the task force. I know that recommendations will be coming out very shortly. The task force was tasked with coming up with recommendations based on the 9 criteria or the 9 items that we were supposed to tackle. The next step is how the government actions that, because a lot of them are going to be requiring Treasury Board approval or going to require ministry changes. So we did our part. We feel like we made change. We feel like that we made some amazing and great recommendations. There felt like there was buy-in, but now the action and the next steps will be coming out. So I'm looking forward to that. The entire task force is looking forward to that. So thank you. And I appreciate everyone's feedback on that call. And then, no, I don't know that gentleman, but I know that any referral for towers come in through planning and the board sees those. So I know that I can think back, there's been a number of those over the years. So I guess the board does get visibility on those towers. So yeah, we can certainly reach out if there's any questions or comments.
He just gave me an update of what's happening in Monty Lake. So.
I just have a question through the CFO. Hildebrand, have we got rescheduled the date for our 2024 planning session? Because it was canceled for tomorrow. Is there a new date set?
So I had sent an email out to the board through you, Chair, to see if there was interest in actually having that meeting and didn't get any response back. So my assumption was the board felt like our strategic plan was fine how it was. And so we just scheduled that in as an option to tweak or change or add or change, but didn't receive any feedback at all from the board. So it was canceled. So no, nothing's been rescheduled.
I must have missed that email. Did any of the other directors see the email about our planning session? I don't.
It was.
I would never cancel a planning session. They're very important, no matter when you do them. Usually they're better off if you do them in December or January.
It was done during my CAO report. I'd have to look back. I think it was the last one where I was talking about our strategic plan and how we're going to report out on it. And then we talked about that date coming up and if there was a need to make any changes because we're really only a year in and we're just kind of getting underway. And it's been kind of adopted by the board. So the point is do we need to go and we usually do it once every 4 years. And this was just a check-in to see if the board was interested. But in that meeting, nobody said anything back as far as any concerns in canceling it. There was no feedback from the board. So that was the direction.
I must have missed that because what I'm used to doing is having a planning session and it's an update every year when you look and spend a day looking at what you're doing. And it's important that we do that as a board because it gives direction, whether we're going in the directions that we wanted to do last year. It just gives us a chance to update and maybe prioritize. And I would really appreciate having a planning session meeting. I can't believe that I missed not responding.
So my presentation that day, and I'll look back to the day, was about how we were going to report out. And we said we were going to do that a few times a year and report how what the status is against our strategic plan. And we're going to have it on our website and we're going to track it just like we did the forensic audit. So that's what I presented that day and the board was in full support. And so I thought that was a great idea. So that's how that's the direction the board gave us.
Obviously I missed that. So we don't have an opportunity to do a planning session this year.
But I guess the board can certainly add that in. But we asked that, I specifically asked that during my presentation and everyone was fine with us just getting updates throughout the year as I suggested. So if the board wants to do another session, we certainly can.
I've always found that very important. What it does is it keeps the board focused and understanding and updating us exactly where we're at and where, and I understand we should always get the reports quarterly or however you want to present them. But we do need, I feel we do need as a board to have a planning session.
So my goal was to report back midway through this year on exactly how we're doing and the status of our strategic plan. So that's what I'm working on already. So if that's changing, I would need the board to tell me
And
how they
that-
would like to see it.
I understand that part, but that's why a planning session is so important. Yearly, you look at where you're going and what you're doing as a board, and unfortunately, I missed that I had to respond, that the planning session is very important to me, always has been. I've been doing it for 20 years. And we've always had a planning session every year. And it doesn't change where you're at. It just reinforces that we're going in the direction the board wants to go in. And then if there's a priority might come up that the board hasn't had a chance, it's a new priority, and it just depends where it fits in the new the planning.
Okay, I'll certainly make a note of it and again, follow up with the board and see if there's any direction, for sure.
Director Gagne.
I'm just wondering if it makes sense, given what you said, CAO Hildebrand, if we received your report and considered mid-year this planning session, that might be useful. You present the report and then we can discuss that whole thing, have some opportunity to have that strategic direction. That might be useful timing.
That's the intent. And so I'd welcome feedback for that. That's
So-
what we're working towards right now, so.
Right, so I'm just wondering if that meeting that Director Laird is talking about, if the timing of that kind of a meeting would make sense mid-year.
Perhaps, yeah. So I think my goal was to actually bring that back to a committee of the whole meeting so that we could actually talk about where we're at from our strategic plan, and that would give the board opportunity to provide feedback, questions, perhaps give new direction. So yeah, that could certainly happen. And then at that meeting, if they feel like they want to go deeper and actually add another full day and meet and talk more about it, then I'm open to that. So what Director Laird is saying, I'm totally aligned with. I'm just taking the feedback the board gave me.
Do we have to make a recommendation that we have a planning session, seeing as that was canceled this year, or will we actually get a date for a planning session?
So we haven't planned that yet for, like I said, for June. You could make the recommendation.
At least it would give the board, because it would go to the full board, the recommendation that we have a planning session, then we could have a board discussion around that.
So the recommendation would come back to staff to do that. I guess it would need to be a motion if it needs to go to the board.
Yeah,
Like
just,
it would have to be an official motion saying that this committee wants to have that planning session.
yes, yeah. So I'll make that a recommendation. All in favor?
Would be me a motion?
Yeah, a motion to
Okay.
discuss having our planning session rescheduled.
I second it.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. I think that might be the last item. Unless there's something else from the board. Thank you very much. It was a little bit longer meeting, but got through it all. Thank
So did we adjourn the meeting and vote on that motion?
Meeting's adjourned.
Hang on for a minute. We just got to finish the
Yeah.
meeting, Mike. Director Gagne, we just need to finish the meeting. I don't think we've adjourned.
No, I forgot to adjourn the meeting.
You did?
So,
Okay. Okay, we
meeting's
didn't hear it.
yeah.
Thank you.